learn with me what the hell is going on. Someone needs to get this message to the defense. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
I'm always confident in my team.
Reed's defense team maintains she's innocent, the victim of a law enforcement cover-up.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
There is so much going on. Every time I think I'm not going to record a video or I'm done editing a video, it's time to record another video, and we are 2 days in. No, that's a fact that we all, because we've taken many hours out of our lives to investigate this case, we all know that that is absolutely false. This guy is just the world's biggest on every level that a person could be. Between incompetence and stupidity, Michael Proctor wins the award for a combination of both. There's just no way they could have gotten into a huge brawl in 7 minutes. It's just not possible. Who are all the powers that be? Look at the smile on his face there. Did you see that, by the way? Did you see the smile on his face in that? I didn't notice this until right now. But that it would have been an accident, the way that the John O'Keefe investigation was handled. In addition to being two of the world's smartest engineers and scientists, they are also two of the world's leading subjects. Those ARCA guys, man, they are just more and more impressive. Man, this guy is like dishonest to his core. Morning, everybody. Police cars, ambulances, fire department, emergency vehicles, and you, Brian Albert, a man who, by every measure, appears to be the man of the house. He's stoic, he's a guy in charge, protects his family first and foremost, right? At no point do you wake up or go outside and say to somebody, why are you here? What if there was a gunman? Because you don't know. How do I know? There's 40 cops in front of my very small front yard. That's the bedroom window. Here's Sonny. Hey, hi, everybody. There's my son. Hello. Sonny barks if you walk by my window and sneeze.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I wasn't going to record a video today, but then I stumbled upon this.
The key cycle 1162 contained the two triggers that you're talking about, right?
Yes.
That's the 3-point turn, I guess now a 3-point turn, right? Changing direction, and then the reverse at 24 miles per hour, correct?
Correct.
Here's the car at key cycle 1162 making a 3-point turn, driving the car onto the tow truck bed. More brilliant testimony from Trooper Paul, far and away, our favorite Massachusetts state police officer. Consciousness of guilt. He comes unraveled because he's not in control.
If anyone else was involved in those conversations.
The district attorney.
That would be Mr. Morrissey, is that correct?
Yes.
There you go. There's who our decision makers are from Michael
At some point,
Proctor's
over the course of this case,
perspective. Unbelievable.
Closer up. Now you're starting to see the blurs easier.
You see those two blurs?
Are moving around.
For a while now, I've thought that Jen McCabe's behavior is a little odd. Doesn't try to get the blankets. This man that she claims on the stand that she loved so much. He was my friend who I loved so much. There is no possible way that Jen McCabe could have searched something at 2:27 and it had shown up at 6 something. Whatever timestamp was on that deleted wall file is the time that she did that search. And she deleted it. Let's make sure and pin it on this girl who I hope kills herself. That's a class act. You are a class act, Michael Proctor. Definitely someone should give you a gun and a badge. 100% sure that Karen did not do this.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Beningo. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a 6th-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor. And I am here breaking down the Karen Reed case. Woo! What a day it was. Wow. What a day it was. What a day it was. And what an ending it was to what has been a wild 30 days. Wild, right? So different than the last trial. And we've finally come to what appears to be the end, barring some kind of very bizarre, catastrophic set of circumstances. So, I mean, so much to say, so much has come out, and you got to give it to the defense because, you know, end of last week, I'm in my head kind of reeling like they're playing it too safe. I don't know. And of course, logically, I know that, these guys are incredible and I have all the faith in them in the whole world. But in my head, I'm scared. So I'm like, I don't know. And, Brennan is just, so, but you got to tip your cap to this defense team because they knew what they had. And they made a really incredible strategic decision, right? They made the decision, the calculation to, rather than do kind of what happened in the first trial where, the prosecution, displayed 68 witnesses. There was just too much information, too much going on. The people in the house, as much as they are important to us and entertaining to us, and as much as I want to, get more content from them that I can analyze and pick apart, when it comes to Karen Reed and whether or not she is guilty of what she's being charged of, if there is no accident, there is no case. And all they really needed to do was display sufficiently to us that there could not be an accident, and that the pieces that on that scene, on that night, that morning, that day, that whole day, right? However you want to define the crime scene, whether it's, the first group of investigators, I guess so-called investigators, Canton police, whether it's the CERT team and the Boston Police Department, the Massachusetts State Police Department that comes in later on, doesn't make a difference no matter how you try to square it. And Dr. Rentschler drove home that point today. It is just not possible. It is not possible. No matter whether John was clipped, no matter whether you want to say he was hit this way or that way, he could not have ended up 10 to 20 feet over there, right? By that flagpole. Not possible, not possible, not possible. And probably the most poetic moment for me, and maybe the moment that hit home. There's been a few this week in particular. This week was definitely one of maybe the most significant week for me because these people put the pieces together. Like, I realize now in hindsight, after listening to Dr. La Fasada and listening to Dr. Rentschler in particular, but also Dr. Wolf and everybody else too, Dr. Russell, I mean, the whole group, but particularly Dr. La Fasada with that very critical detail that John did not die from hypothermia. That was the moment where just all of the lights went on. And it was like everything I knew about this case just flashed before my eyes, and suddenly everything made sense. The Google search makes sense. Oh, and of course the investigator that, the defense brings in, I don't even remember who, I guess he was a substitute for somebody else, whatever, the guy that did the measurements, that went into the garage at 34 Fairview and saw that there was blood evidence, although we didn't see it. We know that's what he was doing there. We know there's photo evidence of it. And hearing that, and then when the way that she described the head wound and explained so clearly about how he had the broken bones to the base of the skull, and the way that the way that injury then impaired the neurons and ultimately essentially almost immediately killed John O'Keefe. It just was like, oh my god, right? And then it's fascinating because what came up, the first thing that I heard was Jen McCabe. And like 30 different moments of all of her collective statements and testimonies and whatever flashed before my eyes. And I was like, oh my God, this woman has told us all along what happened. Like, it was just so clear, right? She just gave us a roadmap to what happened, right? It never made sense to me, and I'll get into this more as we go through. I have a bunch of video I want you guys to see, and I want to hear from all of you. But specifically, when I always had a hard time with the Google search. I know the Google search happened because I spent a ridiculous, absurd amount of time digging through, all of the different ways and configurations for how you could determine whether this Google search happened, right? And I'm going to show you a lot of that. So don't you worry. I'm going to show you what I learned about the Google search so that you can learn it too. But now that I know that she definitively did make that search at 227, I could never quite figure out why she would have made that search. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, why would you be Googling that? Like, because I'm like, what is the rationale there? And then when I heard that he did not die of hypothermia, that there was no hypothermia because he was already dead, it was like, oh, wow, that's it. That's the piece of information that we all needed, right? Because what are the implications of that? What are the implications if John did not die of hypothermia? Well, number one, it gives us motive. And all of the people all of the haters of Karen Reed, everybody who wants to say, well, like what's that? Not doctor, Joseph Krosky, like the lawyer. Oh, no way, Brian Albert's, gonna leave a guy outside to die. Well, but if he's already dead, that's a different story, right? If he was already dead, then you might leave him outside because he had no chance of life, right? And the only reason why we didn't know that is because when somebody is found outside, and by the way, think about the people in the house who would have known this. Brian Albert would have known this, and firefighter, first responder, trained medic, military medic, the whole thing. Brian Higgins also would have known this, that if a body is found outside and it appears that it has been outside at whatever temperature for however long, you can't pronounce it deceased, that body, until it heats back up, right? So it was a brilliant decision on their part, as much as I hate to say it that way because it sounds horrible, but it's true, right? It was so, and I think what must have happened is Brian Albert must have called, right? Calls Jen, or had been speaking to her and said, well, what about hypothermia as a possible excuse? What about hypothermia? So then now you have Jen McCabe going, oh, okay, let's see. Could he have died of hypothermia? Right? So I was like, oh, that's why she's Googling hypothermia, because they're trying to come up with viable excuses. And that was a viable excuse, because how would anybody know the difference, right? How would anybody know the difference? So that really, like, when I heard that he did not pass away from hypothermia and that he died instantly, almost instantly, and that she was sure of it, and that freaking Dr. La Posada. So Dr. La Posada was interesting for a lot of reasons, right? I mean, we could probably spend days and weeks just talking about her and Hank and the whole thing, but she was interesting because initially the so-called judge makes the decision, right, that she shouldn't be allowed to testify, that she's not an expert enough. And so when Jackson then spends, I don't know, I mean, it goes on for like an hour. At one point, I left the testimony and came back. It was like 40 minutes later. She's still giving her CV. She's still giving the resume. At that point, she's talking about the nightclub and the fires. And I'm like, this woman is like the most qualified person that the world has ever seen, right? And then it turns out that Hank Brennan has used her, has hired her himself. So he knew her, he had a personal relationship with her. It's like, this is just nuts, right? Like, what? This is nuts. This judge is nuts. These people are insane. And then like the incredible lawyer that he is. And I feel like we have seen the best of Alan Jackson this week. Now, we've always seen Alan Jackson be great. I mean, that's a huge statement for me to say that, because he's always great. And he's, his opening statement, his closing last year, I mean, he's great. But this week, the way that he has, fought, like in that courtroom, fought Brennan every step of the way and stayed on that judge and fought her so that that doctor could say on the stand that it was an animal that attacked John. It was a brilliant argument. He fought for it. He got it. And it was really important, right? It was really important. And even though she couldn't say, dog, she's talking about canines. I mean, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear that word, right? I mean, of course, she was talking about a dog, right? So, and I was thinking about just one more tiny little detail. I was thinking about the little abrasion on John's knee. So I was thinking about if a dog was to jump up on you, right? So thinking about his height and about how big a 90-pound German Shepherd might actually be, if they were to jump on you, it's possible that their toenails could, leave a little cut on that, on your knee. If they were to jump up on you and they're biting at your arm, they could very easily leave a scratch, right? So that sort of made sense to me too. So as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, oh my God, like all this stuff is just, as I'm listening to these people testify, it's like, whoa, this is nuts. Like, so I feel like we've all been trying for a really long time to make sense of all of this, try to figure out what happened on January 29th, 2022, but we just didn't have all of the right information. But because of this trial, and actually this week in particular, we got a lot of really important information. And I mean, like, seal the deal kind of information. So, and I should tell you also that I'm very lucky right now, because it's just total by coincidence. I happen to have about 1 month of a little bit of extra time before I have to do a bunch of other things. And so I could dedicate more time to this trial. And so, these last few weeks, I've been like watching Michael Proctor and with my like earbuds in, also watching the trial live, and, or watching the testimony of Brian Albert and Brian Higgins and all of these different people, mostly to try to figure out what happened, right? Because let's be honest, as much as I am enthralled by this trial and it's fascinating and it's interesting, and of course I want more than anything for Karen Read to be freed, I also want to know what happened to John, right? So I would love to hear your thoughts. I will also say just a few more things before I turn it over to all of you. Turning point for me of this trial, assuming that there are no shenanigans, assuming that there are no bought jurors, which is a big if. So I'm not hanging my hat that it's a guaranteed win or anything like that. It just feels like a win because Hank Brennan has essentially thrown in the towel by not bringing back Judd Welcher. I think that was a smart move. I think that was the right move, but I also think it was probably about self-preservation and not actually about like anything like meritful, right? Like there's no merit in it. It's not because of a move that's related to integrity in some way. It's really just saving his what, because clearly this ship is sinking. And I did have the thought. So you probably heard me say this, I've mentioned it. I don't like to throw around diagnostic terms. I'm somebody who doesn't love diagnoses, generally speaking, unless they are really warranted. But I have been playing with the ideas like, is Hank Brennan a narcissist? And I ask that question because he projects and he gaslights with every breath. Like he does it so much and so often, he like tells on himself constantly. And that is exactly what narcissism is and does. And that's how you know when you see it. There is also, at its core, narcissism is about control. And clearly, this isn't even questionable. this is a man who has very obvious control freak type tendencies, right? He's extraordinarily anal retentive. He does not like feeling out of control. And clearly he has lost control. He also doesn't seem to have much self-awareness because by all accounts, this jury doesn't seem to like him very much from what people in that courtroom are saying. And I can't attest to that, obviously. I can only say that that's what other people are saying. And according to everybody in that courtroom, or at least, many people have said, like, they don't seem to like Hank very much. And even the judge made that comment a few days ago where she was like, the jury seems like they're done. Well, I'm sure they're done because imagine if you had to sit there, think about what it's like, right? And I'm sure that some of you feel this way, how it feels to be sitting at your house or wherever you are, right? Taking a walk outside and listening to Hank Brennan cross-examine Dr. Rentschler today. Like, imagine having to sit there and watch it and just take it and just take it and just take it and take it. And like these cross-examinations, they've gone on way too long. I mean, and it's like he doesn't realize that, he doesn't realize he's losing the jury. That seems like a pretty important detail, right? So, I mean, these are all signs of narcissism. And then the last one, most recently, where we started to get some kind of rumors or whatever about what these jury instructions that they're going to ask for look like. And all of a sudden, Hank Brennan wants some instruction from the judge about the defense bullying witnesses or something about how they are threatening people into testifying. And all I can think about when I hear that, I guess that I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we could all speculate why he's saying that. I'm sure he has his reasons, whatever. But to me, you've got Brian Tully sitting in on every single witness interview that the Commonwealth gives. Like, could there be a more threatening person in the room than Brian Tully? So it just feels like Hank is constantly kind of outing himself. And every time he accuses the defense of anything, to me, or like corruption or collusion or, pay to play. I mean, is this guy kidding? Like, what? Like, we all have eyes. Do you really think, Hank Brennan, that none of us see that you spent $400,000 on a guy who dressed up like John O'Keefe and threw himself into the car? Like, okay, I have to show you this. I have to show you this. I have to show you this because look at this. This guy. Like, are you serious right now? Is this? I don't know. Sometimes I just think I must be losing it because how could this really be happening? And this costs the taxpayers. This isn't like I'm not the defendant who's paying out of pocket for this. This is Hank Brennan throwing around taxpayer money to buy this, right? Is this guy nuts? What?
Note, just before the car starts to make contact with the surrogate. What did you note?
So in order to get that pattern on the arm.
No, that's not it. Why can't you see me? Ah, there it is. Okay.
Car contacts the arm. The surrogate pushes his elbow forward, leans into the car against the light, and then.
All right, I'm going to do it again. Here we go. I'm bringing it back, bringing it all the way back.
As just before the car starts to make contact with the surrogate? What did you note?
So in order to get that pattern on the arm, right as the car contacts the arm, the surrogate pushes his elbow forward, leans into the car against the light, and then rolls off.
Can you play that for us, please?
Look at that. Did you see
it?
it?
What you were describing in that video?
Throws his arm
I did.
in?
I can slow it down. So you can see, even at this point, as the car approaches, it would not contact the elbow or the biceps. So as it comes in, watch the elbow. All of a sudden, shoot in. Surrogate turns his arm in and then leans against the light cover. So this is not indicative of someone standing there and having a car back into their arm. In order to get that pattern of pain on the arm, someone would have to stand there, and as the car approached and contacted their arm, they would have to actually push their arm forward and lean into it to get that pain pattern.
Is that, in your view, proper scientific testing?
Sustained.
Why wasn't he allowed to ask that question, by the way? Hello? What is going on? Oh my God. And that's the other thing. Obviously, the so-called judge, I mean, it's just, can you imagine if the defense pulled this crap that Hank pulls? Like, she just like, I'll let him have it. Overruled. It's like, what what goes on in this woman's mind? Like, what is going on? How do you guys just have no foresight at all? Is nobody here at all thinking about what happens after this trial? And you guys are thinking you're just going to go back to your shitty lives? Like, and no one's gonna, I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts. It's nuts. I can't. They paid $400,000 for this guy. What is going on? So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. 100%. Cynthia, I couldn't possibly agree with you more. It is so out of control. The situation in that courtroom was so out of control today. And, I got to say, Dr. Rentschler handled it, I think, a little better than I expected him to. At first, he seemed a little shook, right? But, man, he handled it pretty well. And he had some, pretty good comebacks for Hank, who just doesn't seem to, realize that he's burying himself. And that's what I mean when I say that there's something almost narcissistic about it. Yes, Tommy G. I am. First person to ask me that question, so I figured I would just go ahead and answer it. I am. I know. I actually think about this too, about John's family. I mean, obviously, how do we not think about it, right? Every camera, every 5 seconds, we're zooming in on John's family. So how do we not think about it? But I agree. I agree, but also I know how strong confirmation bias can be, and I know how powerful it is. And they are so invested. And it's obvious that Peg O'Keefe never loved Karen Reed. I mean, from the very beginning, the first thing that we hear is that, right, that they were in the car, Carrie Roberts and Karen are in the car, and they speak to Peg on the speakerphone, right? And she's like, how did you leave him alone at that party or whatever? So we know that she doesn't love Karen and never did. So it's easy once you make your mind up. I mean, think of it like this. Think about, and I'm not here to, talk politics, but think about politics. It's a pretty comparable comparison where, you have two people or two sets of people looking at the same information and walking away with pretty much equal opposite versions of what they're seeing. And so it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same. God, I hope that's true, Josie. So someone was consoling the mom. I think she finally realized that they're brainwashed. I would love to believe that that's true, but I don't. They're so invested. I mean, if they see, this is the other thing, and I don't know if this is true. I think this is something we don't have enough information again to know this, but I wonder if Michael Morrissey would change directions if the family went to him and said, enough, drop the charges. And actually, I have thought about this. I thought about this because here's the thing. If Hank Brennan really was a narcissist, he would very seriously think about dropping the charges. And the reason I say that is because if you think this through from Hank Brennan's perspective, he's done. I mean, he's done. His reputation is shot. He has essentially thoroughly destroyed himself if they lose, right? If she's acquitted, he is finished. And once they turn the situation over to this jury, Hank loses all control. All control. It's right. So I think for him, there's probably a part of him that would like to drop the charges because then what happens? He immediately becomes kind of like a better person. He immediately becomes almost like a hero figure, right? So it's a way to salvage his reputation by doing, quote, the right thing, even though we've seen absolutely no evidence of his ability to do the right thing at all. And I have very little confidence that he would do that for that very reason. But from a narcissistic perspective, it is the right call because this ship is burning, right? And if she's acquitted, this ship, it's I mean, these people, right? Is Hank Brennan planning on retiring? I hope he made enough money to retire, because I hope it was worth it. I hope you did this for something. I really do. Yeah, I think it's honestly, I think Pixie Megan says I heard that Brennan was getting 300,000. I think it might be more than that when all is said and done. I believe originally it was like 125,000. I don't know if that was a retainer. I don't know, but then it has gone up ever since. So I bet you by the time all is said and done, it's at least 300,000. I mean, he's done a ton of work on it. So I guess if you're going to get paid, it makes sense that he would get paid for it. But he's ruining his life. I mean, like I was saying, like Beverly Cannoni, this woman, like, she's not going to be able to go to like the gas station and hey, Bob, he's just not, he's going to like not look, he's going to be like, oh God, and like run off, like no one's going to want to ever see this woman again. Like, I just don't get it. Like, you're really, I don't know. I mean, maybe she's just so ingratiated into the like Mccalbert community that they don't see any, they don't see the downside. Like Michael Proctor clearly doesn't see a downside, right? I guess. Because if you are a Mccalbert, then it's like I live in my little bubble and everybody just kind of reaffirms my bubble, and I guess that's interesting. Yes, Vespere, I think it says, it's a lovely name, says, I have genuine fear for all the defense witnesses. It's funny because I never think of that because I'm so knee deep in the other side. I don't think about the haters and, the 1/4, whatever. I don't even know if it's a quarter. It's probably, not sure what the ratio would be, the 10% that are just violently against Karen. But obviously, like Dan Wolf was getting death threats or whatever, his wife, whatever. I'm not sure the exact details, but I know that he was being threatened. So yeah, I mean, if she's acquitted, absolutely. But here's the thing. Think about Turtle Boy. There will be like another side to that. The other side of it will be that they'll always be kind of held in really high regard at the same time. Hopefully that balances out a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. Kim says Beverly has her supporter. I know. Well, that's the thing. I mean, to me, Kim, that was the moment too, where it was just definitive that there's corruption. I mean, the other thing that I think this last week has, the final nail in the coffin in terms of the corruption side, I feel like this trial has made it very clear that there's two sides, right? There's the people in the House, there's the Mccalberts and which really is Brian Albert and the minions, the people that sort of operate for him on his behalf. And then there's the cops and the corruption and Michael Morrissey. And yes, they kind of come together at a certain point, but Morrissey very much is in charge of this whole operation. And he and this judge absolutely, without a doubt, go back probably to childhood. I'm not sure what the age differential is, but I bet you they're close. Right? Because she probably looks a little younger than he is, but they are probably really close in age. Their families go back. I'm telling you, there's some incentive, and it's personal for her. And it's not just that she very clearly does not have a very high tolerance for, high-priced, fancy defense attorneys, which I think is part of it. But there's another part of it. There's got to be. There's just no way. Because there's a price. Like, she does. These are locals, and like, you're right. She has the supporters, obviously the Norfolk County Bar Association, whatever that looks like. The locals, whoever that is, do support her. But you're not just going to like move on, carry on, and that's it after this, right? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. But it is something. There's something. Absolutely, there's something. Yes, that's right. Shari D, right? Yes, Michael Morrissey and Judge Cannoni's mothers were both lunch ladies. Absolutely. And her, Michael Morrissey's father was a teacher. I don't know if he actually was a teacher of Beverly Canones, but he was a teacher in the same high school that she was at. I don't know. He was a plumber teacher. So I'm not sure if she was in the plumbing classes, but it's not impossible. So yeah, I mean, these people go back. Quincy is not these are not big communities. I don't know if we have a lot of Massachusetts folks here with us, but these are smaller communities, and they're towny communities. I mean, there's just no doubt. Like growing up, I went to high school in a town very similar in Massachusetts, a little bit smaller, but very, very similar. I mean, we have like the Alberts and the McCabe's. I mean, there's just like, I can see them in my mind, right? So it is very, very comparable. And these towns, like, yeah, these families, they just stay forever, and then their kids stay. And it's just, so, without a doubt, there's corruption. I mean, look, this is no longer a question of if. It is now a question of to what degree, to what extent, like how far off the path are these people? To what degree is this particular office, Michael Morrissey's office, and these police officers, like how deep is this corruption? Because the thing about this case is that it was a Boston police officer. So there's the possibility, I mean, you could potentially make a case that this was extenuating circumstances, that they were very quick to plant evidence because they clearly planted taillight evidence. There's the other thing that Dr. Rentschler, to me today, definitively proved, and you know what? Good job by him for actually saying it almost. And then he implied it, and then Hank sort of says it. Oh, you're saying that somebody planted evidence? Like you guys saw what happened. So, right, that was a pretty good moment. Hank trying to blow up the spot, but all he's doing is making himself look horrible. It is really clear that they planted taillight. And for those of you, I will show you this. I pulled this because it's not so easy to find some of these things. You have to really dig because there's so much Karen Reed footage now on YouTube. It's not so easy to find the old stuff, like the old news clips and hearings. I mean, you really got to dig. Sunshine says, it's obvious Bev doesn't care what defense has to say. She just wants them to hurry up. Yes, without a doubt. Yes, she clearly, except, I mean, I think it's interesting. I've heard a few things. We have a connection now, kind of an insider, like loose association with somebody who's pretty close to the lawyers for the defense. And there's interesting things that go down at sidebar. And so there's some interesting pieces there where some of the attorneys feel like there's a lot of like showmanship going on because of the awareness of the amount of attention on the amount of eyes on the case. So it's hard to know how much of the defensiveness that we're seeing from the judge is because she thinks they're performing. Like she thinks, Alan Jackson is performing for the Karen Reed fans, that kind of, you know what I'm saying? So I think the judge has in her mind that some of the behavior in the courtroom is performative and therefore tries to kind of be punitive against the defense for that, even though quite obviously Hank Brennan is doing far more performing than anybody else in the courtroom, right? I don't know why it's not working very obviously also, but I want to show you something. Oh, there's so much in here, you guys. Oh my God, I can't wait to show you all this stuff. There's so much stuff. There's so much evidence. This is the other thing. Like in my mind, I'm like, all right, just got to pray to God that at this point, the jury sees the truth. We have to all hope. I feel a little better knowing that Turtle Boy has identified who he thinks the 6 jurors that they will be quick to boot off the jury is. So I'm really hoping that that helps. Like, in other words, if it is those 6 people, then we know immediately that there's tampering going on, right? So I know I would be shocked. Well, and somebody, thanks Kaylee for your comment. Yeah, I'd be shocked too, because the FBI likes sure things, right? I mean, everybody, if you are at all like a true crime fan, you know that the FBI likes sure things. Like they want a cut and dry case. They want to know that they're going to win. It's kind of like the P. Diddy stuff, right? Like they're not going to bring a case unless they are 99% sure they have enough evidence. And I don't know. I mean, maybe if we had Brian Albert's phone records, those would probably be, I don't know if that's possible to get those. I think those would probably be really important to have. Having said that, I think you could probably get Brian Higgins to crack. So I'm just throwing that out there. I think you probably could get Brian Higgins to crack because he's just a big mush ball. He's so emotional. Kimberly Phillips sends $9.99 and says, love your wisdom and analysis of the Karen Reed trial. Thank you for all you've done and continue to do. You guys are amazing. I just reached 20,000 subscribers. I'm like, what? Just so it's really, really clear. Like that was never my intention. I never set out to get lots of subscribers and like never, ever, ever, ever. It was never in my mind. Literally, I decided to do this 10 minutes before the trial started. I was like, I just need some place to vent because I was so frustrated during the last trial. I was so upset. It was like I had no place to go. And I was so upset and freaking out last year. I was like, I just need a place to go and vent and be a part of this community. And here we are. So who knows? I take it one day at a time at this point, but I appreciate your support. I really, really do. It means the world to me. You guys are amazing. And it also, by the way, has restored my faith in humanity. It really, really had, because I had some, somebody mentioned this already. My father is in New York City, he's a pretty well-known figure in the world of sports. He's a former radio talk show host. I guess he's still on the radio, but mostly retired, does a podcast, whatever. If you're a sports person, he's kind of like a cult favorite. And so I'd had some really negative experiences online because of my dad. And so I kind of stayed away. It was just like, I'm busy anyway. Who cares? I don't need to do social media. So I just didn't, and then just all of a sudden one day I was like, all right, I'm going to do this thing on YouTube. And so it's awesome that it's just nice that there's faith. I have faith in the world. People are good people and they want to be supportive of each other and say nice things and not just be cruel and tear you down. Right. And that's awesome. And I really, really appreciate it. So, thank you. I really, really mean it. Inside Your Bone says, I do cybersecurity. Ooh, that is super interesting. What is that like? I want to know what cybersecurity is like. I'm sure if they want to track down that phone number, yeah, right, they would be in their records and they'd be able to do it. So I'm glad that you're actually here because I would really like to know that if they destroyed their phones the way that they were told by Michael Morrissey to do. By the way, did you guys know that? I just learned that recently, that it was in the dump by the feds to the defense team. One of the things that they got was that Michael Morrissey was the one who told Brian Higgins and Brian Albert to destroy their cell phones. And I think that's why he was on the witness list. So my question to you or to anyone is, if you destroy your phone, is there still a way to get the records? My instinct is, of course there is, but I don't know. So it's an important question, right? How do I? And also, you guys forgive me, I'm still definitely trying to figure out how to use this system. Sherry D says, new listener, follower, love your freak outs and venting energy. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. It's so important. I don't know what I'd be doing right now. I'd just be freaking out by myself. And it's just so much more interesting and fun and dynamic to do it with all of you. But I would definitely still be freaking out. Just, yeah, by myself. All right. I want to show you this before I completely forget to, because I will. Like I said, there's so much, like when you go back, I mean, there's so much, like Chris Albert's testimony. If you have not seen Chris Albert's testimony, again, you know, the other thing is, okay, so during the first trial, I listened to it. I was actually like repainting the inside of the interior of my house. So I was just painting and I was listening, but I wasn't watching. And if you want to know what happened in this case, you have to watch. You really do. It's tedious. It's a very tedious exercise because, you know, who wants to stare at Michael Proctor for 3 hours? My God, it's kind of gross. But there's kind of no other way to like get to the same information. And sometimes, like, for example, with Brian Tully, oh my God, watching Brian Tully, it's so dry to listen to. But when you watch his testimony from the last trial, I mean, just from that testimony, like I learned so much, not only about Brian Tully, but about all these things I had questions about, like the sirens in the background during the trial, that the sirens in the background are actually intentionally for them. That when Brian Tully is on the stand and there are sirens in the background, that is the cops, you know, doing it on purpose to send him their support or to be, I don't know, interfere. I don't know what exactly, but so you know, those are things like you probably think as you're listening, like, God, there's a lot of police sirens. I mean, this is a small community. Why the hell are there so many police sirens all the time? Oh, well, yeah, because of the trial. That's the answer to the question. Brian Tully is who we got that from. You know, I don't know if these people are just not that smart. I mean, probably we can conclude that because they just don't realize that we are all watching so closely. I don't know how you could miss that, but they really don't seem to get it. And if you are not familiar, this is a shout out right now to Truth Revealed. If you are not familiar with Truth Revealed, you must be. You must be. I will just say that for now. Yeah, you must be. Sergio Denaro, I think is his real name. If hopefully I said that right. Just so good at what he does and so helpful when it comes to this case and trying to figure out what the hell happened. And in fact, I'm going to show you something in just a little bit. He kind of figured it out before like he didn't even know anything about the case. Like he literally, like someone I think reached out and said, hey, will you know, analyze this testimony? And then did the analysis, but really didn't know anything about the case and somehow like is calling it, you know, right. Just from that is wild. It's wild. It's really, really cool. If you haven't checked him out, he's amazing. Okay. So I want to show you this. I don't know if everybody's seen it. I hadn't seen it until recently. It's coming up right here, I think.
Is that traveling in a...
There's a lot of good stuff in Dr. Rentschler's testimony. All right, it's quick. So this is the CERT team.
Found outside a home in Canton is that of a Boston police officer. Officer John O'Keefe, who was off duty, was found dead on Fairview Road yesterday.
Okay, here's the CERT team with their shovels. Remember they said they had shovels?
Originally.
Okay, here's one guy with a shovel. I guess we can assume.
So she's only in this for a minute. You know, I'm really grateful for her. Thank you so much for having posted this, Melanie Little. You're amazing, obviously. So, but this is incredible, right? It's incredible that we have this CERT team footage. And what do we see? What do we see? We see guys with masks and unidentifiable clothes and unidentifiable cars and a bunch of people walking around, right? When they ask the guy, the head of the CERT team, O'Hara, I think his name is, right? Lieutenant O'Hara. And he's like, yeah, I didn't know who those guys were. Lieutenant Tully was there, but I didn't really know the other guys. I mean, I assumed they were police. That's reassuring. Great. Okay. So yes. And I learned so much. Somebody's shout out to Melanie. She is somebody, when I first started listening to the Karen Reed case last year, when it began, she was so helpful to me because I'm not a lawyer. So just
He's on the cert
having
team.
lawyers
Look at this
like
guy
that,
walking with the lantern.
critical.
Remember Trooper Connor Keefe said they had those hats on with the miners lights? Okay. Is this one of the randos that they were talking about?
Yesterday morning in front of a friend's house. State police were at the scene last night investigating this. At this point, it's not clear how he died. An autopsy is set.
The other thing you notice,
O'Keefe was
right? So look at the way that they carved this out. So there's the flagpole. I mean, think about this. Think about what we're talking about. A police officer was found dead on the lawn of another police officer, and they do not search. They don't touch. They don't look. Forget about going in the house. They don't even search the lawn. How does that make sense? Like, think about it. If this was not corruption, okay, if this was legitimately what they try to pretend like it is, what would be the rationale for not investigating the rest of the lawn? Like, oh, well, we got what we needed? Based on what? How could you possibly know that you got what you needed? You found his hat? I mean, what do you mean? There could be another dead body under that snow, right? If he was outside all night, I mean, there wasn't snow last night, it's like, I mean, think about how absurd it is. Talk about consciousness of guilt. Like, these people are so guilty. It's beyond, it's so incredibly obvious. It's bizarre almost, right? Like, it's bizarre at this point. It's like a serious head scratcher. I don't get it. Yeah, right. No red taillight pieces. Well, that's because, here's the other thing, by the way. The night of this search, right? The CERT team search, I think they find like 4, maybe not even 4, but it's like tiny, like little pieces of red taillight. And then I think what happened was they got greedy. Like, that wasn't enough. They wanted, remember what Proctor tells us, Proctor. You gotta love Proctor. Just gives us a roadmap to exactly what happened, right? Serious charges on the girl. Whether we can prove it or not, right? I mean, he's telling us exactly what's going on. All the powers that be want answers. I mean, it's just he's telling us what happened. It's wild. It's wild. Professor Butler says you don't have to be a police officer to be part of the CERT team. Civilians can join it. Wow. Jesus, that's pretty scary. Think about, there's like this weird thing on my screen that blocks me from being able to see the bottom of everybody's comments. It's so annoying. Think about when they go and do a search and rescue in the middle of the woods near lots of peeps. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing though, right, Professor? So here's another question for you. I mean, was the CERT team really the right group to be there to begin with, right? I mean, they came out allegedly because of the weather, I think. Normally it would have been the crime scene investigators, right? What was the CERT team doing there? It's like a whole other set of questions. There's just so many of those in this case. And it just never stops. I mean, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. Denise Pelton sends $4.99, says, I think Brennan had the realization today, Karen not guilty, and she's telling the truth. That's a wonderful idea. But I think that Hank Brennan just has too much pride to allow that, even if he believed that she was not guilty. I just don't think he could come clean on that. I really don't. The other thing is, Brennan has gone to great lengths. Like, when I heard the lawyer today, this is a really big deal. Like, the thing about Peter is that, like, he really, and I've listened to him for a long time now, over a year, and on multiple cases, not just Karen Reed, and he likes to be in the middle. He really, really does not like to take a side, even in this case, right? He really, really tries to be down the middle. And today he's talking about prosecutorial misconduct. Today he's talking about, the possibility that like he could be there could be very serious penalty for his behavior today, for his behavior in this case. And so if he's saying that, I feel that. And I know most of us feel that in some way. And I'm not a lawyer, so it's, I don't know what's appropriate. To me, everything he does is a lie, is cheating, is like scumbag stuff, right? To me, if you're a lawyer, the other thing I will say about Hank too, and I think we've all probably sensed this, he definitely doesn't seem to understand the difference between being a defense attorney and being a prosecutor, because it very much seems like, think about the way he's presenting Judd Welcher. Like, he's actually telling us today that Judd Welcher, this is how he was arguing against Dr. Rentschler. He's saying Judd Welcher wasn't trying to prove anything. He was just trying to show that it could be possible. Aren't you on the wrong team to be making that argument? Isn't that the team that the argument the other team is supposed to be making? Right? Like, no, you're supposed to be showing us definitive proof, not trying to show us that there could be possibilities of things. Like, yeah, there's lots of possibilities, Hank. Well, that's great, but that's not your job. Your job is to show us definitive proof beyond a reasonable doubt, not to say, well, it's possible that there could have been a car accident. Well, yeah, okay, I guess, like, it's possible. Theoretically, it's possible that aliens could just, come down right now and, I don't know, take over Earth. Right? Anything is possible, theoretically. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, but it isn't even possible. And that's the thing that I think Dr. Rentschler did repeatedly reiterate, right? He's like, actually, you know what? No, it's actually not possible. And okay. And that's the thing. And I want to try to show you guys this, because this is the thing that when Dr. Rentschler said this, it was the evidence that proves there was planted taillight. It definitively proved it. Like, I know that Dan Wolf spent a lot of time on the taillight, and certainly I'm sure that when I had this kind of like epiphany moment today, it was very likely informed by the very lengthy testimony of Dr. Wolf. But I want to show you this very quick kind of interaction where Dr. Rentschler explains to us something really interesting about the taillight, and the way, maybe it was the way he explained it, right? It was so, I was like, wow, they really planted this taillight. They really did. And now obviously, I already believed that. I believed that for a year, but it's like, we've all been screaming and yelling about planted evidence and all this, and it's been definitive. But now when you actually have science telling you there's no other possibility, there is no other possibility. Like, somebody had to bring that, like, what he was saying was John's clothing could not have taillight in it. It's not possible unless somebody took taillight and put it on the clothing. That's what he was telling us today. It's like, oh, wow. Okay. That's insane, right? But that is what he was saying. It's not possible. It's not possible. There's no way that the tail light could be in John's clothes, right? So let me just play that really quickly. I'm sure most of you probably saw it, but just in case you missed it, it was, it's quick. A lot happens in these. All right, we'll come back to that.
Note, as the car just...
Oh, yeah. I try to make little signs in these videos so that I can find things more.
You say the weight of the arm is 10 pounds. 300 Gs means there's 3,000 pounds of force acting on that arm.
Is that enough to break a bone?
It's more than enough to break a bone.
Break a bone.
Fracture, to tear ligaments?
Absolutely.
Not even getting into that part.
What about the bones in the hand? Are those stronger or the same resistance as the bones in the forearm? Or are they more delicate?
Sure did.
No, the bones in the hand are, as you can imagine, much weaker because they're much smaller. When you look at the carpal bones, the metacarpal interphalangeal joint, which is basically your knuckles, they are much smaller, and it takes much less force to fracture your hand bones compared to your ulna or your radius.
Let's go to the next slide, please.
Let's see if
What are we
this-
looking at in this slide?
So this is a 24-mile-an-hour impact with the arm of the dummy.
Oh, this one was really interesting too, because the way that this is not what I wanted to show you, but the way that he shows us this, you actually see like the impact where the arm kind of bends backwards. You know, you're like, I mean, anybody with eyes can look at that image and say, yeah, it doesn't matter if he was sideswiped, if he was clipped, like if his arm made contact with a car traveling at approximately 20 miles per hour, yeah, he's going to have something broken, right? Yeah. And yeah, Tucker News mom, absolutely. He did literally hide the x-ray. And I think that's the reason why he's not bringing Welcher back. If I'm being 100% honest, I think that's why. I don't think it's because he knows that obviously Welcher would be destroyed and it would make him look worse. Although that is the reason why he shouldn't have bring him back or shouldn't even think about it. I actually think that the reason he's not is because he knows that the defense is just going to immediately start asking about the x-ray and expose Hank. And again, that's not the first time. And then I haven't even gotten into the Brady stuff, right? Like that's a whole nother conversation. But think about how crazy that is. Imagine that Hank Brennan doesn't give his accident reconstructionist the x-ray of the arm. Like just think about that for a minute. Imagine he doesn't. And why wouldn't he, right? So what would be the benefit to Hank to not give Judd Welcher the x-ray? What does that give him? I think it's pretty clear that he didn't, because I didn't get the sense, and I'd have to go back and actually really analyze, which I would never want to do every second of Welcher's testimony to actually definitively say if he was lying, like outright lying. But if he was, I didn't get the sense he was my point. I don't get the sense that he was lying. I think he didn't see an x-ray and didn't think there was an x-ray, which is insane. Could you imagine believing that, by the way? Could you imagine believing that this arm, that there's this much money, time, energy, effort, and discussion about, that the medical examiner didn't do an x-ray? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Contacting the rear, again, tail light. And it shows you the motion, the dummy suspended.
Right
shows you the motion
video.
of the dummy, and again, the force and acceleration.
Close it down.
Now, that right video I put in because that's real-time video. We've been showing the low speed, but look on the right. This is the actual speed at 24 miles an hour. That's what it looks like if you have your hand out and it's struck by an SUV.
Yeah, really
is the arm accelerated in this? Do the same physics apply? Is the arm accelerated up to the speed of the car in milliseconds?
It is, yes. It's all about weight, right? Because you have a 6,000-pound car and you have a 10-pound arm. It's whatever speed that car is going, your arm, your hand, whatever's sticking out there is immediately going to get accelerated up to the speed of that vehicle.
The video on the right is in real time. Like you said, it's sped up in milliseconds. Is that right?
That's correct.
Is the Hybrid 3 that's used in this test, is that suspended from above?
And by the way, if you haven't seen any, like the video I did on the injuries, go yourself. It's hard to show them on YouTube because they won't let you. They essentially hide your video if you show. It has to be done like in a very educational way. And because it was done like I was, an educator, they allowed it, but it's not easy to do. So go yourself and look at car accident victims and look at dog bite injuries or people who've died from a dog attack. And it's not even close. I mean, that's why the medical examiner, why Dr. La Posada was like almost laughing at the idea that she wasn't qualified to make a determination about what caused those injuries on John, because to her, it's like, it's a joke. It's ridiculous. And it is. If you look at there's actually, I mean, they might have even referenced it. I didn't take the time to look at who they were referencing in the trial, but there are a few documented cases where people have died from dog attacks, and those people then dedicated their bodies to science so they could be studied, and we all have access to it. You can find it, and it's crazy. Like, there are those, if you look closely at John's arm, there are these little points, like they're like little dots. It's nuts. And you'll see them when you see somebody who's attacked by a dog. That's what you see. You see these little dots, like they're kind of sprinkled around next to these parallel lines. And it turns out that when you don't have to do this, by the way. This is not like deep dive investigating. This is like Google 10 minutes and you'll find this. And what you find is that those scratches that you might immediately assume are claw marks, the abrasions they keep talking about, the parallel lines, most of the time those end up being bite marks from when the dog doesn't, like, imagine what happens when a dog goes to jump on your arm. Everybody pulls away, and that's how they get the lines. From when your arm pulls away and a dog is trying to bite, it misses, doesn't get its whole jaw around your arm. And so it just gets like the teeth end up just scraping. And that's a lot of these injuries end up coming from teeth in that way. And obviously Dr. Russell told us that too, but you can see it. I mean, it isn't even hard. The point I was trying to make, though, is when you look at car accident victims, I mean, you just wait. If you haven't seen this, you need to, because it's nuts. Like, we're talking about, I don't even know, or like people's arms get crushed. I don't even know. I don't even have the language to describe what happens to the human body when it gets hit by a car. But like the arm, it like gets squished. It becomes like, you got to see it. Or like the entire front of the Mercedes emblem gets, like the actual emblem you can see in somebody's arm or on their thigh, wherever they were hit. But there are very obvious patterns that you can see immediately. Just Google, car accident victims, and it's nuts. I mean, it's not. This case is nuts because the fact that, like, you can't, it's so obvious. And why do we have to go through? Think about the time, effort, money, all of this. Just so what? So what? Michael Morrissey can what? What is the game?
The dummy in this test is suspended from above, yes, like a pendulum, barely touching the ground.
Is the dummy connected to the ground in any way?
No, it's just its feet are barely touching.
What would happen if there were forces applied to that dummy that went perpendicular to the travel of the vehicle?
And by the way, that's another example of Brennan, the way that his guy used the same exact crash test dummy. And we only find that out after he spent how much time, making Dan Wolf look and feel stupid? I mean, it's nuts. Oh, somebody's giving us. Okay. Sometimes the chat moves so quickly, it's really hard to see. Okay, I'm going to keep going because I really want you guys to see this.
The dummy would swing out like a pendulum in that direction.
Based on your review of the test that was done, the 24-mile-an-hour test, were there forces on that dummy that were perpendicular to the car such that the dummy would swing out or be forced out or be propelled out away from the car?
No, there were no forces from the testing, and it's simple physics. Your center of mass of your body is basically your umbilicus or your belly button. So in order to move the body, you have to apply a force at that part of the body. If your arm's struck, it's not going to move your body appreciably. All it's going to do, your arm's like a moment arm, it's going to spin you around. Could there be some motion forward or backward if you take a step? Possibly. But the center of mass of your body isn't going to move. You have to get struck by the vehicle to have the body actually move in a specific direction.
Think about how obvious this is, by the way. I mean, this is so important, and this is the reason why I put this clip for the next clip, because this is the important lead up to that, right? So how does John's body if Karen backs into him the way that they are claiming, how does John's body get 10 to 20 feet off the road? We all saw with the crash test dummy. Now, yes, it was, hanging from above, but we all saw when it was hit dead on, it gets thrown directly behind the car. And that's exactly what these guys from ARCA have basically been telling us for the last year, that that's what would happen, that there is, remember Trooper Paul's like ballerina thing, and then he gets tossed, and you love how these people, like, they think that this is common sense, right? So they're like, and that was Hank Brennan's argument today. That's Judd Welcher's little paint experiment. The whole thing is, well, yeah, look, it's just, see, it could happen. There's taillight there. See, probably it could happen. It's like, and then Hank Brennan. Oh God. Hank Brennan has the audacity to tell us in his opening statements that science is what is going to win this case for him. Like, science for who? Science for toddlers? Like, science in what universe, dear? This is exactly the opposite. Like, everything that science is designed for so that it doesn't happen is what they are presenting. Like, they're saying, like, yep, see, look, there was like, the car went backwards. I mean, the other thing is, and Josie Liu and co, thank you so much. She sends 1999 and says, to hear Welcher, Burgess, Hyde, and go back to listen again to Whiffin's Cross confirms all coordinated times events to ensure all PowerPoint presentations coincidentally match the Commonwealth's narrative. 100%. And that's like the point, right? Like, there's a narrative and they're sort of like, yeah, it could happen, but let's just take the telematics. Okay. So I've had this wonderful person helping me via email try to understand the key cycle data. And basically what it appears happened, in case you are not, I don't know if you're familiar with the key cycle data or not, but it's the reason why the defense isn't really addressing it is twofold. One, they weren't allowed to because the judge shut it down. She wouldn't let them bring up Trooper Paul's report, so they really can't bring it up. But number two, there's so much uncertainty around it. And why there's so much uncertainty is because this type of data was never meant to be like pieced together the way that they are piecing it together. So that's why, like, it's almost like Shannon Burgess could say whatever he wanted and Judd Welcher could just say whatever they want, because nobody really has done that before. And I think that's part of what DeSogra's testimony was supposed to help us understand, that what they're doing is extraordinarily unorthodox. It's not the way that like infotainment systems and telematic systems are supposed to be like linked up with cell phones to determine, like whether or not John took 36 steps at what time, right? So, my point being, it's all very sus, because basically what you can do, and this is what Shannon Burgess did do, you can start with the outcome that you want and then try to find a way to that outcome from the data. And that's exactly what he did. In the first go round, and this is what DeSogra pointed out to us, in the first go round, in that first January report, they used one sort of like, I guess, method loosely. I use that term loosely to come to whatever data they presented. And then in the second report, they changed that method to match, as you're saying, Ian Whiffin. And Ian Whiffin, you guys, so he's interesting. He's a lot, I would say he's like 1,000 times smarter than Burgess, and maybe not Welcher, but definitely Burgess. He's much smarter than Welcher also. So he doesn't appear as pay to play. He's not obviously a pay to play guy, but make no mistake about it, he has every personal investment in making sure that the Commonwealth, that the prosecutor's office is happy, right? Like every possible incentive a person could have, because he's not just thinking about this case. He's thinking about every case that he ever has going forward that celebrate the entire business. Celebrate was designed to do exactly what he does. He almost had to find a way to make Jen McCabe's Google search not at that time, right? Because that's what Celebrite's supposed to do. They're supposed to be the people that help the prosecutors prosecute bad guys by hacking into their iPhones. That's the whole premise of Celebrite, right? Ugh. It's also very frustrating, Josie, and thank you so much. Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, the whole thing is nuts. All right, so let me show you the final nail in the coffin for me on this last point, and I think it's going to be right now. If
Can
not,
we go
I'll
to the next
fast
slide,
forward through
please?
it.
What is this showing?
So this is a slow-mo of the overhead from the real time. It was a GoPro that was recording that real-time video, and this
Oh,
is
look at
slow
this.
motion
Oh,
of
just, you
that
have to see
video.
this quick. Look at this.
I'd like to
Look at
ask
this
you a couple
arm
of questions.
bend
As
inward.
you see
Look at that.
the vehicle contact the
Ugh.
arm, what happens to the
So
arm
gross.
as it's being contacted in those milliseconds where it's being accelerated
Yeah.
up to 24 miles an hour?
Well, the arm's accelerated up and pushed away from the body. So whatever part of your arm or body is contacting the car,
Totally.
that's going to be pushed forward away from the rest of your body. So not only is it loading the arm with an impact force as it strikes the arm and the hand, but then it's actually stressing the
Look at
joints
that.
too.
Look
It's
at
like
the-
ripping imagine having a car come and
Look at that.
3,000 pounds of force pulling your arm
That's
forward
insane.
at the elbow, at the shoulder joint.
Imagine
it's putting
what
a lot of
someone's
force
arm-
and pressure on that appendage.
That's
What's
just
the G-force for the 24 mile an hour impact?
G-force, let me see
Could
exactly.
you pause that video?
I mean, that's insane. And it's just, these accidents are insane. Okay. And the fact that like John O'Keefe would have to have like stuck his arm out like he wanted it to get hit by the car. I mean, it's just the stupidity of it all. It's like insulting that these people actually think that we would believe it. I guess that's a whole nother discussion.
How many punctures or holes there were in the sweatshirt, which was 0.
If you had done this test and changed the arm angle, do you expect the damage would look different as far as the brakes and that taillight?
Well, we conducted a number of tests. It may look somewhat different, sure.
If you conducted this test and moved the arm angle, not another test, this test, but you moved the arm angle, do you expect that the brake would look different?
That the brake would look different?
Yes.
It could look a little different. I mean, certainly the brakes looked a little different in the test, but they were comparable to each other.
You do not know how John O'Keefe was standing that night, do you?
Well,
No, I'm going to allow that.
You do not know how John O'Keefe was
Of
standing
course
that night,
she
do you?
is.
if he was standing, if the impact occurred, then no, nobody knows how he would have been standing.
You would
Think
not
about
know
how
what his arm
quickly
angle was,
Judge
would you?
Bev shuts this down if it's the defense.
You would not know the exact speed of any vehicle that hit him that night, would you?
Sustained.
The debris, the broken taillight, is that traveling in a consistent or a different direction?
What do you mean consistent or
Is it
different?
all going in the same direction or is it going in different directions?
No, there's some spread to the debris.
So the pieces don't all fall right in a pile with each other, do they?
They do not know.
Continue, please.
This could include reasons such as the device entered.
That's a whole other world. I don't know why I can't find this clip all of a sudden. It's so annoying. Let me try.
Note, as the car
Nope.
make contact with the surrogate. What did you note?
That pattern on the arm, right as the
Okay, let me see. I'm going to try one more time. There it is. Here it is. I don't know why that took so long.
And the taillight material, did you make note of that in this frame?
I did, yes.
What direction is that taillight material going relative to the vehicle?
It's going forward.
And where is the arm?
The arm has been pushed away. Now, you have to remember, as that arm, if it contacts and fractures the taillight, it's not exposed to the fractured pieces that still exist on the taillight itself, because those pieces that fracture haven't gone anywhere because they're against the arm itself. And then as the arm moves away, the pieces then move with the vehicle.
Are the taillight pieces upon fracture moving at the same speed as the arm upon contact?
That's correct, yes.
Is that a matter of physics?
That is a matter of physics, yes.
Is there any possible way for the broken pieces of taillight to out-accelerate the arm upon contact when the arm's being deflected away from the vehicle?
It is not I don't believe it's physically possible. That was not demonstrated in our testing, and I've never seen that demonstrated in any peer-reviewed articles. Now, you can see here again also the light and the fragments are being propelled forward. So you also have to consider where Mr. O'Keefe was found. He was found in the yard about 10 or 20 feet from the road. There was no exact measurements. But if you look at the motion of the taillight, it's going forward. Now, if Mr. O'Keefe has to move diagonally to the top left of that corner, and if he's not hit with the center of mass, he can't get to where he ends up before the taillight fragments have already gone forward and been deposited on the ground. Average running speed is like 4 to 6 miles an hour. Even if this SUV is going 10 miles an hour, the lights fracture, they're dispersed on the ground, and then Mr. O'Keefe somehow ends up to his point of rest. But you wouldn't find the fragments on him because they've already been pushed forward, come to rest, before he even has a chance to get to where they find him.
Okay, so that's the moment where, and why can't you see me? Why don't you see me? Here we are. Hi. Okay. That's the moment where I knew for sure that they planted the evidence. And it's not like I didn't already know. Of course I knew. We all know. I've been knowing. We've all known forever, right? But when I heard him say it that way, I was like, oh, right. It's not possible. There's no way those clothes get taillight pieces on them any other way besides. And I love Dr. Rentschler here because if you really watch him closely, he's telling us they planted the evidence. I mean, he's insinuating it strongly, but very subtly and very carefully. He's careful not to say it outright. But he likes this. You can tell that he likes being a part of this case, that he likes like uncovering the fact that it's corruption. And we're very grateful for him. My God, he's just, told us definitively that the district attorney's office planted taillight 100%. And I also want to just be clear about that. We all instinctively have said, okay, it must have been Proctor. It must have been some way that Proctor got to 34 Fairview. And just to be 100% clear, in case you're newer to this case or just don't know this yet, nope, that definitely did not happen. It was 100% definitely Brian Tully and the mysterious group, whoever they were that he had with him. Could have been, I guess, Michael Proctor in masks. Doubtful, though. I don't think he needed to be because Brian Tully was there. And all they needed to do that day was plant. And I believe, and I'd have to go back and double check, but it's like 3 or 4 if you go back and you study Buchanan's testimony, which, by the way, I did. I don't know why I did, but Buchanan was one right in the beginning that I wound up really studying very, very closely. It's like pretty amazing how much information we got from him. Actually, he was very, very helpful. Not necessarily because he was trying to be helpful, but he really was, told us a lot. And he really explained, or at least helped to explain. Proctor, by the way, if you go back and watch his testimony, he does a lot of explaining of that too. He does a lot of explaining that day. So he basically both of them, they go through each moment because Adam Lally was guiding the first one. And, Lally was just so boring and just, would drag everything out. He could drag taking a shower out for 3 days on the stand. And that's what he does with Proctor. So you hear where he is every moment of the day, and Buchanan is with him the whole time. So they both do it. And they have this meeting at the end of the day before they go home. And that meeting, it's really interesting because when Proctor's asked, what did you talk about in that meeting? First thing he says is the taillight. First thing he says is the taillight. And I'm like, oh my God, he's telling the truth. That is what they were doing, talking about that. That's exactly what they were talking about, is the taillight. It's just amazing and Jen McCabe, I got to tell you, Jen McCabe's testimony. Jen McCabe is such a terrible liar. She's so bad at lying that she basically tells us exactly what happened. It's wild. It's wild. I mean, she's lying the whole time, but because she's so bad at it, it's like she just gives the whole thing up. It's really, really interesting. So Harriet Hari Watson sends $4.99 and says, I know maybe my gut's wrong. Also a PhD psych student. Welcome. Wondering if Bev and Hank could be lovers or could have been. It's not crazier than Case. No, it's not. I mean, when I first read this, I kind of chuckled for a second, but then I thought about it and I can see why you would say that. They obviously have a dynamic, right? They have like an inside relationship of some kind. Clearly, we see her signaling him throughout the case, at least twice I've caught with my own eyes, right? And I'm sure there's probably, if we all go back and analyze every second, I'm sure there's plenty more. And I could see why you would think that, certainly. Bev's egregious, horrific decision making and arrogance and obvious bias against the defense predates Hank by so long that, you know, it's hard for me to think of that as some type of motive for her in terms of like, you know, what might be motivating her to continue to be completely biased. But I don't, you know, it's not impossible. Certainly stranger things have happened. The other thing about Bev, and I know you guys know this, or probably most of you do, you know, she's not had the easiest time. I mean, she comes from a big family. I'm sure there's addiction in that family. She lost two of her siblings, one of them very recently in August. One that was actually pretty close in age to her, you know, in August, actually right after this trial, I think last year. And then she had a younger sister who passed away back in 2015. You know, I'm sure that she's, you know, struggled and had her issues and probably still very much does. The problem is that, you know, you pick the worst, these people, and I've always said this, and now it's just personified on steroids. These guys, they never imagined in their wildest dreams that all of us around the world were going to be sitting here, you know, hours of our own time dissecting every move they make. I mean, there's no way that any of them ever thought it for a second, right? So, you know, I mean, obviously, even the judge now doesn't. She's literally telling Hank Brennan when to object. Talk about arrogance. Like, you just have no self-awareness at all, either of you. Just no self-awareness. It's just wild. It's like it really is like, you know, Melanie calls it, I think, the upside down. It's nuts. It's nuts. It really, really is nuts. So yeah, would I be surprised if they had some kind of a, you know, sexual relationship? No, not terribly. I mean, it's, you know, horrific to think about, but certainly it's not impossible, right? I mean, this case is nuts. Lisa Lee says Bev is giving Hank signals like she's a Fukin Empire at a baseball game. I know. And well, you know, it's funny that you like the baseball reference because I, of course, think a lot in sports terms. And I think about her as a referee or an umpire, the person calling balls and strikes all the time. And I think about like what her rating, because I don't know if we have any baseball fans here, but when baseball, I used to work in sports a little bit and whatever. And so all of the umpires in Major League Baseball, they get rated by Major League Baseball. They have a rating. And that started, you know, I want to say like maybe 15 years ago, maybe a little less than that, where once the technology was good enough to be able to be certain about where balls and strikes are when they come over the plate, there is actually a strike zone now, and it is definitive. And when at the end of the year, like every pitch that they call is, you know, assessed up against like for a total score, and then they get rated. And if it's a low, you know, rating, then they're in trouble, right? Like you can't just decide like, nope, this is going to be a strike one day, but it's not going to be a strike another day. And oh, today I feel like calling balls lower than, I mean, you can't do that. You can't get away with that anymore. You maybe could in 1971. But Judge Bev, that is what she's doing. She's just calling strike after strike after strike after strike after strike. And then every once in a while, we'll call a ball, for the defense. And then with Hank Brennan, it's the complete opposite. It is just like, and all of us have eyes. So, but I guess like some of you have already pointed out, and she just is being encouraged. So why shouldn't she be, right? Why shouldn't she act like she's the god of her world and we're all just visiting? Legal onlooker. I think that's how you say that. Legal onlooker. $4.99. Sends $4.99 and says, I wonder if Bev doesn't allow attorneys to state the basis for their objections because she hopes to obscure, her biased rulings from as many as possible. That is a really great point. I mean, right? So that, and maybe not even just so that she can kind of obscure her bias, but also so that she remains in control. In other words, she can decide without having to definitively state why she's making the decision. She can just rule. Like, you know what I mean? Like, in other words, well, I'm just going to decide, and whether there's a legitimate reason for it or not, you can't call me out on it in real time because you don't know my reason. I don't know what the sidebars are like. It would be really interesting to learn about the sidebars, learn more about what happens there. Because, we don't know. Maybe she behaves a little bit differently when it's just them. I doubt it. I can't imagine how much different here's the thing about this judge, right? She often exhibits a lack of self-control. Like yesterday, it seems like this was 2 years ago, but I think it was yesterday when she loses it on Jackson. Was that yesterday? When it was the hearing where, what is he arguing? This was the hearing. Yes, this was yesterday with Dr. La Posada after Hank tries to make this big fuss about some political, I mean, I don't even remember all the details. It was yesterday, for God's sake. But however, whatever, Jackson tries to get up and defend her and immediately starts kind of telling a story that's a long story and is a little bit long-winded, and she kind of shuts him down, and then they end up having it back and forth and whatever. It ends with her kind of huffing and puffing and angry at Jackson. And it's almost like she's admonishing him, and you're like, is this really happening? Is this real life? Hank Brennan, in addition to like, I don't know how many Brady violations. I mean, if we count Adam Lally, who everybody just gives a pass because he's so unassuming. But Adam Lally, I mean, he is so corrupt. If you go back and you actually think about and pay close attention to the questions that he asks each of the witnesses in the house, there are so many occasions where in order to skate around the questions that he knows are going to be sensitive and that the defense are going, like, in other words, any time where you would naturally, if they were involved in something nefarious, he's like sort of skirts around those in this kind of like artful way. So if you don't know that's what he's doing, then you don't know. But if you actually believe that these people are guilty of something, it's like he's trying to protect them. So you have to ask, like, does this man, does he know that they did something? Like, is everybody in on it? Is everybody aware that Karen Reed didn't do this? Or is he just defending that internally in his mind, that kind of behavior? Like, these guys literally, they flipped a video around in the Sally Port, presented it like it wasn't flipped, and then told us, see, look, Proctor's not behind the right taillight, even though it was the right taillight he was behind. That happened in, like, we were there. All of us saw it, right? So there was no admonishment then. So this is just nuts. It's constant. It's like constant Brady violations. It's constant. Just, I don't know how many videos. I mean, the defense still hasn't gotten the videos. Have they? To my knowledge, no. No videos have yet to appear. I mean, it's just, so none of it is surprising, but now that we have this additional information coming out about what happened on that night, now that we have actual real, like top level grade professionals, experts who are coming in and they're telling us definitively John O'Keefe did not die of hypothermia. There was no hypothermia. It's interesting too, because if you go back and you watch Scorty Bellows' testimony, she is a little hesitant with the hypothermia. You can see she's a little, she's a little reluctant. And you can kind of feel that as she's being asked about it. It's very, very interesting. It really, really is. Yeah, and the altered videos, yes, Cindy points out, I just happened to look down and see this too. Yeah, I mean, the altered videos, 100%, 100%. So Ryder says, no, they literally all know Karen Read is innocent and are just doing what Morrissey wants. I wouldn't be surprised if they all had black belt on each other. That's why they are agreeing. Yeah, Ryder, I mean, very, very possible. Right? Very, very possible. More so too, I think this is where I think the two things come together. This is where the people in the House come together with like the people underneath Michael Morrissey. Brian Albert. I don't know what the relationship between Brian Albert and Michael Morrissey is. On its face, it doesn't appear that they would have much of a relationship. But let me play you this very quick clip. I'm just thinking right now off the top of my head if it is actually quick. I don't know if it's really as quick as I want it to be. Let me see if I have it here just to throw up. I don't think I have the cut about Brian Albert, but it's Sean McDonough. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's a former Canton police officer and who retired, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. I could be way off on that, but I think that's, if I remember correctly. Let me see if I can pull it up because it's definitely worth seeing. I'd seen McDonough be interviewed many, many times, but I hadn't seen this interview. And this is the first time that I had ever heard that Michael Morrissey was the one who directed Brian Higgins and Brian Albert to destroy their phones. It was the first time I ever heard that. And he talks about how cops oftentimes would carry like a black book, right? Like the idea that you do favors for people as a police officer. I don't know if you've ever, some of you I'm sure are very close to police and law enforcement. I used to, as a counselor many years ago, earlier on in my career, I worked with the EAPs for the NYPD. So a lot of the NYPD, if they got into trouble with alcohol, not allowed to do drugs, obviously. So if they got into trouble with alcohol, they had to go to like rehab. Basically, they would come and they'd work with me. And every time I graduated one of them, no matter male, female, whatever, they would always give me one of those, like the cop cards. I forget what those are called, like the like card that has the NYPD logo on it and then their names. I forget what those are called. I'm sure you guys remember. But you get those cards, and that way, like, I guess if you get pulled over, you show them the card and then they let you go. I mean, I guess that's the idea. I never actually used them in that way. I just thought it was endearing and that they all would give them to me. But basically what he was saying was like, cops do people favors so that they can get favors back, right? Like later on, I might do you a favor today, but when I need a favor, I'm going to come collecting for it. Kind of like reminds me of like a Vito Corleone kind of a thing, but not quite to that degree. Right. So, and obviously, yes. And Sean McDonough says that Brian Albert's fingerprints are all over this. And I could not agree more. That is why I initially was 100% sold on a cover up because of Brian Albert. Like sold, totally sold. The second that I heard that Brian Albert did not come out of the house, and then like from his own mouth, like he actually says he slept through it and the dog did too. When he was saying that, and then I learned about Brian Albert, he's the oldest of the 6 kids. Like there is no world, no world. It's not where Brian, like the taillight pieces, the fact that they could never have leapt over onto John O'Keefe if he was positioned by the, flagpole. The same way Brian Albert would not have known they were on his front lawn. Like it's just, there's no universe where that is what happens. So it's totally absurd. Susan Davis, and I wonder, Canada, you're from Canada. Oh, welcome. Sends $5 and says, I have been following this case since 2023. Common sense proves Karen Read is innocent. Absolutely. Yeah. Somebody else was asking this. Do you think John's mom realizes how wrong she's been? No. Nope. I think, I hope she, I actually was really glad that Peg O'Keefe testified because I know why Brennan did it. He did it for sympathy. And I think that's, obscene, but I liked her. Like I thought I liked her kind of more than the way that she's sort of portrayed generally amongst a lot of the FKR folks, which is just a natural instinct probably to protect Karen, right? Of course. So, and of course, the way she's been very rude, and she has been very rude to Karen Read. So of course there's an instinct to want to like make her out to be just nasty. But I actually thought a little bit more of her personality came through on the stand. And of course I feel for this woman. I can't even imagine losing 2 children. I mean, it's not even like, I don't even want the word, the thought in my head, but no, I think they're dug in. And somebody was saying that she was being consoled in the courtroom today. I also wonder if John's father is sick. I know he's not been around, and he was very, very present during the last trial, pretty much every day. I have not seen him as much during this trial. I do see him every once in a while. I heard he was sick. I don't know if it's true. You kind of hope that this can imagine what the toll this must take on you. I mean, imagine for 2 years, you lose your son, you immediately turn your attention to this case, and then trying to go after his ex-girlfriend, which by itself is nuts. I mean, to me, this is the woman my son was living with for 2 years. My instinct would be to want to keep her close because I want to be close to my son. It would not be to try to like vilify her and try to make her out to be like this demonic figure, particularly because this is the woman that his niece and nephew, but ostensibly his children, spent so much time with, right? I mean, you would think that, but that is not the case. I think, look, some of these communities, the people are just like, they get something in their head and it's just the way it is. And there's nothing you're going to say. I mean, you see that with a lot of the anti-free Karen Read people, right? Like they have decided definitively she did this. There's no evidence that you are going to present that is going to unconvince them of that. And it just doesn't make sense. Like it really doesn't, right? I think it's that, but even worse. Slinky-2021 sends $5 and says, nope, I think Bev barely tolerates Hank. That's maybe you're right. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you are right. Says his name. Yeah, maybe. That's very funny. I wonder, I'd love to know what your hubby was saying about the glare. I would love to know that. What you're talking about. I think, look, Hank is an unlikable human being, period. He's not a likable person, but I think what brings the two of them together is that if it's Michael Morrissey, I don't know whatever the thing is that is motivating all of these people to want to go to great lengths to try to make Karen Read guilty is bringing them together. So she has no choice but to support him. And she does. I mean, she has given this man so much leeway. Think about the whole ARCA thing. If you think about the way that whole thing went down, where Hank had, what happened there was, right, the voir dire, like the third voir dire these poor people had to go through, when Dan Wolf just got beat over the head. Hank is like screaming at him in the courtroom because of the missing text messages. I think what happened there was Hank Brennan believed wholeheartedly that the defense was doing something nefarious, and they, mistakenly didn't understand that these two men have integrity and are real scientists, and just assumed they were like his guys, like Welcher, and he's like scumbags like he is, because that's what makes me think this guy might actually be a narcissist, is because I do think that he projects like onto other people and makes the same assumptions. So I believe that he thought that he had them red-handed and went to the judge and said to the judge, like, I caught the defense red-handed colluding with ARCA, and therefore we can keep them out. And he put more time, effort, and attention into trying to exclude ARCA. Although, to be fair to him, now we very much know why, because he has no defense. And think about this. Think about how crazy this is. Okay, think about how crazy this is. ARCA testified more than a year ago. Hank Brennan had their transcripts from their testimony and from 2 voir dires. You couldn't find a way to make tests that were comparable. Think about like how incompetent you have to be. You had what they were going to say. You knew exactly what they were going to do. You paid $400,000 to some guy who basically just proved that Karen backed her car up and made a 3-point turn that she told you she made, which you can't even definitively say beyond a reasonable doubt was Karen driving the car, right? Because Trooper Paul screwed up and wrote down on a piece of paper that he started his testing at key cycle 1164. So you can't even definitively prove, because the whole argument is some people believe that Trooper Paul made a mistake and that he really started his testing at 1167, while other people believe that no, he did start his testing at 1164. And so key cycle 1162 is Karen's car being placed on the tow truck bed. So, but there is no definitive way to prove one way or the other, because there is no clock associated with that telematic information inherently. So these are the arguments, right? I mean, this is why this was not, it was so dumb. It's like Hank went out and said, all right, guys, focus on things that ARCA isn't looking at, so that way they can't make you look bad. So ARCA wasn't looking at the telematics, although they obviously could have been, because Dan Wolf is an expert in that, apparently. So, don't look at that. It's just crazy. It's like, this is the thing. It's absurd. If Hank Brennan really believed that Karen Reed killed John, you couldn't have done better than what you presented with Aperture? Like, seriously, though. And yeah, at the taxpayer's expense. It's nuts. It is so nuts. Yeah, I mean, it's never ending, you guys. It's never ending. Like, we could spend, if we sat here together, we could spend every minute between now and in 4 weeks, we would not be done unpacking all of the information there is to unpack in this case. It is truly endless. It is truly endless. Just a few more things that I want to make sure we talk about tonight, because it is the end, right? This trial is over. And so tomorrow, the lawyers, the judge, they'll come up with what it is that they want to have the judge say, the jury instructions. And then I guess, I don't think there was a decision, right, about how much time they're going to have for closing. Do we know that yet? I don't think so, right? I think they're going to argue that tomorrow. You would think that because there was a mistrial last time, that the judge wouldn't want that to happen again, and so would say, okay, I will give you more leeway this time. Like you would think that, right? But I don't know. It's insane. Oh. Harry Watson sends $4.99 and says, I kind of resent you because I cried while watching your Higgins crying video. Oh, I'm sorry. I know it is hard. I know. Yes, you do want to hate him. And like, I do hate him, like, cause he's a fucking drunk idiot who did something really stupid. Right. And maybe more so just for being, such a coward. Like it's so cowardly. Okay, on one hand, but, and maybe this is kind of interesting. This is coming up right now. It's interesting. When we were just talking about Brian Albert, right? And how Sean McDonough was saying that Brian Albert, his fingerprints are all over this. And I totally believe that too. So the question is, what was the role of Brian Albert and Colin Albert? And maybe Brian Higgins isn't talking not because he doesn't want to, but because he can't, right? Maybe he can't. Like maybe whatever's going on, whatever involvement the Alberts have is preventing. And I don't know if you guys heard that comment. So this is the kind of stuff you just have to go digging. I mean, you just like dig endlessly and this stuff comes up. And it's like a comment that this comment in particular was something that Alan Jackson said during the cross-examination of Brian Higgins that was sustained. So it was a question that never got an answer. But the question was to Brian Higgins. He asked him if he made a statement to the former chief, Berkowitz, of the Canton PD, that even Chief Berkowitz was scared of Brian Albert. In other words, that Brian Albert is a very scary guy, right? So, and they were saying it like kind of in a jokey kind of way, I guess. And of course, Lally objects, the judge sustains it. So we never hear more about that. But I think it speaks to this idea that Brian Albert is a scary guy and that if Colin is involved, well, let's take a look at this because this is quick. Let's take a look at this. I want to show you guys this. Now, again, I'm sure you've all seen some version of this stuff, but it's interesting when you see it all together. So let me see if I can't pull it up. Like I said, we could all spend collectively the rest of our lives sorting through this because there's just such an endless amount of material. Oh, that's not it. Okay. It's pretty quick though, and it'll be familiar when you see it. Let's see. Richard Green. No. Ian Whiffen. So this is all stuff. I have two like separate folders going on. I have my like best of clips from this trial. And then I have my theory of the case, which is just pulling all of the evidence for what happened to John. But when I tell you this is like getting insane, we're talking about hours of footage now. So it's a lot to try to find, on command. So here it is. Okay. Here is the beginning of this. Oh, wait. I think this is it. Sorry. I think this is it. We'll see. I'm gonna add it, and then if I have to take it back, I'll take it.
And look into the source codes to see what's actually happening, correct?
Correct.
So what happens is, in data forensics, because
this is the end
Apple
here,
considers it proprietary and people can't access the source code, there's these various data forensic tools that in some ways try to serve as a surrogate, given the fact that there's no access to source code, correct?
Correct.
So the best
this is about the Google search. So it's the
would
end
come
of this.
from the Apple source code.
Albert told the jury that he
has access to that, or few people do.
I'm trying.
Therefore, these other forensic tools are used.
Correct.
So sometimes examiners have to give opinions like you give because you don't have access to the source code, correct?
Correct.
So it's your opinion oftentimes with regard to ultimate conclusion.
Based on research and testing.
I know they were. Jerry, I agree with you 100%. 100% they were going to blame
Oh, fucking please, before I hit the shit, before I run your shit, before I fucking chug a beer and hit that shit.
Karen Reed's lawyers have been aggressively cross-examining prosecution witness Colin Albert, the nephew of the owner of the Canton property where John O'Keefe was found in January of 2022. Albert is seen in a photo which was taken less than a month after the incident in Canton when O'Keefe died. His knuckles on his right hand are bruised. Now, yesterday, Colin Albert testified that he was at the house on the night in question, but never saw John O'Keefe. Also, on cross-examination this morning, Colin Albert told the jury that he has known the lead state police investigator in this case, Trooper Michael Proctor, since he was a child.
He was not at the house when John was there, so I drove him home.
But why would it matter if he was inside and John O'Keefe was killed outside by Karen Reed? Why did he call Erin Beatty, a girl he wasn't dating, out of the blue at 12:33? Why did his family try to silence the Beattys? Why did his mother offer Proctor a thank you gift?
That's right. Have you solemnly swear the evidence to the court and jury in the case now hearing to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Is it Sergeant Tully, I believe?
Tully, T-U-L-L-Y?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Anybody else? How long was that meeting?
Say 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Your advantage boys.
You indicated.
Oh, I don't know why she's there. Ignore her.
I promise you, I'll fuck you all.
There we go. Wait. Sorry.
Maybe my sophomore.
Wait. We gotta back that up. I don't know how. What's her name got in the way?
Albert told the jury.
There we go.
I do have an opinion.
What is that opinion?
He did not experience hypothermia.
Did you observe any signs of frostbite?
This is quick. Let it her pass.
Well, if someone dies due to exposure to room temperature, you expect to see not only the Wisniewski's ulcers, but you expect to see some
The
frostbite
Advantage
changes
Boys video.
in the extremities.
Did you recognize it?
Yes.
How did you recognize it?
What do you mean by
How
that?
do you recognize it? Is that you?
Yes.
Okay. When was that taken?
Maybe my sophomore year in high school. Around.
Where were you?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Where
So
it
your
was.
sophomore year in high school, that's about 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, around.
You indicated on cross-examination you've never been in a
Worst
fight.
liar in the whole world.
Indicating that you have no violent tendencies and no violent proclivities, correct?
Nope.
What were you saying on that video?
That I would beat them up.
Did you say you would beat them up, or did you say, I will fuck you up?
Watch this.
I said I will F you up.
Watch
No,
his
you didn't
face.
say, I will F you up. What did you actually say?
That I would fuck them up.
You also said something about beating somebody's ass, right?
Correct.
What did that mean? So when you said, I will fuck you up and I will beat your ass, was that a friendly invitation?
No.
That was a threat, correct?
I don't know if I would call it a threat.
Don't?
I'm not sure.
Someone walks up to you. I'm not going to do it.
This is
Someone
so.
did. Walked up to you and said, I will fuck you up. I will beat your ass. You wouldn't take that as a threat?
If they walked up to me, yeah.
Look at that. See it?
They walked up to me, yeah.
So this guy, look at that face. This is what I will tell you something. This is what makes Alan Jackson an incredible lawyer. Because, you know, now that for the last month, I sit here and stare at the screen and watch these like really obtusely detailed moments back and forth between these lawyers. What Alan Jackson is really good at is getting people in their mind to disclose things that they don't want to, or that they don't realize are like breaking through the defense, right? So Colin, he does it. He's like church boy, right? Colin Albert comes in. Obviously, Alan Jackson knows this kid is the farthest thing in the world from a church boy. But he comes in all dressed like a church boy. You've never been in a fight? No. You don't have any, fighting proclivities? No. I hit the bag every once in a while. And then when Jackson threatens him, he's like, so if I came up to you, right? And he's like, and look at the face. He can't help it. Colin Albert is so inherently an imbecile, for lack of a better way to say it right now. He can't help it. He can't help it. He cannot help but get the same kind of threatening defensive posture back. And he gets it. Oh, it's just awesome to watch, right? And this is what happened with the comment about Brian Higgins too. I mean, that's exactly what he did to Brian Higgins. So that's what makes him really, really good at this, honestly. But this kid he's an imbecile. And by the way, okay, he's a young human brain, does not fully develop until 25. So we can give him the fact that he's young. There's definitely some addiction stuff in this genetic picture. Dad killed somebody accidentally in a car accident when he was 22. So, we have that. And, apples don't fall far, obviously. I don't know if you've seen the pictures on the internet of, this group. Not always the classiest of folks, right? They're all over the internet in pictures with their middle fingers all up together. It's like, you might want to think just a little bit, just a wee bit more before you make those kinds of decisions. But okay, all right, you do you, whatever. It's a free country. So the problem is that Colin Albert not only has this kind of imbecilic tendency to fight, he's really impulsive, really quick to anger. All Jackson had to do in a courtroom with a judge sitting next to him is say, so if I came up to you and I said, I'm going to fuck you up, that's all he had to do. And this kid couldn't help but get defensive and be like, I'm going to step to you. This is really happening. So that's Colin Albert. And we know Colin Albert was there. This group went to unimaginable lengths to try to hide that he was there, right? Michael Proctor tried to hide he was there. That's why his sister Courtney Proctor tells him that Julie, Colin's mom, wants to buy him a gift because Proctor keeps Colin off of the paperwork and says he was never there. They just don't mention him. Then, of course, it turns out that he was there. Okay. So, which, of course, the defense knew right away. So, but there's more. So, and again, these are the details that you just don't get unless you go back and you watch, and it's really boring because you don't know what's important and what's not going to be important. You got to watch every minute of these long, boring testimonies with Adam Lally doing all of the leading, which is just torture. But let me see if I can get here because I haven't done the editing on this. That's why it's all messed up. I just pulled it for us for now, but I want to see if I can kind of enough of it.
Would you consider yourself to be close with your sister Nicole and Brian?
Yes, very close.
Your families, it's not just you and Nicole, your whole families are close, correct?
Yes, we have a very close family.
How long have you known Brian Albert?
Since I was in kindergarten.
You consider him, even though he is not blood related to you, you consider him family?
Yes.
In addition to Brian and Nicole Albert, you're also very close with Chris and Julie Albert, correct?
Yes.
Just to be clear, and I'm going to do this slowly,
okay.
Brian Albert's younger brother is Chris Albert, correct?
Yes.
Just how many hours of time do you think she prepared for this? How much practicing? Do you think she did this in the mirror? Do you think she had her sisters come over? Was Brian, who helped her to try to prepare for this?
Chris Albert is married to Julie Albert.
Yes.
You consider Chris and Julie family, even though there may not be a blood relation as well, correct?
Yes.
Chris Albert is a Canton Select Board member, is that right?
Now he is, yes. Now he is, yes.
Not the sharpest tool in the shed, dear. So Jen thinks she's so smart to try to say that now Chris is on the select board. Like he wasn't then. Before John, so what she's actually saying, before John O'Keefe dies, Chris Albert is not a select board member. And now, after he is. Hello? Are we not registering? No, Jen? Nope. You thought that was a good idea to say? Okay. All right. Good. Good job. Okay. Let's see what Chris has to say about being a select member.
Oh, get off my lawn! Oh, trespasser! Do you want to be eaten alive? No! Then get out of here!
You would agree with me that one of your functions as a selectman is to oversee public safety in the town?
Yes.
And you would agree that the police department is a key component of public safety in the town of Canton?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I did like a whole truth detector thing here with this testimony. You don't know this because you weren't there, but that little move by Chris during this testimony is the only time to this point, and it goes on. This is like, we're pretty far through by the time this comes up. He flips it, like his body language. He starts panicking as soon as he's asked about being on the select board and then asked about whether or not they have like the responsibility of overseeing the police department in town. He flips out. So again, not the brightest group, right? So he basically tells us, like 100%, that the reason that he decided to be on the select board was to protect his kid. Now, he doesn't say it was to protect Colin. Maybe you could argue it was to protect the family in general. But it's a pretty big commitment. You have to run for this position. He had to campaign. He had to raise money, had to throw big events. Like, this is a really deliberate decision. And this guy spent his whole life waiting in restaurants, not waiting tables, in restaurants, working in restaurants. I mean, he owns a pizza shop, right? So this is not a person who, like, had an affinity for politics and then, you know what I mean? So it's pretty clear why he is on the select committee. Like, I would say it's a lock. That's why he's there.
So part of your duties as a town selectman is to oversee the Canton Police Department, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll let him have it. Is that one of your duties, sir?
I believe so. I'm new at that. I'm recently elected, so I'm just going through it. But yeah, I believe so.
Right.
Very sensitive answer.
And
Right.
you became a town selectman shortly after Kenny Berkowitz retired, correct?
I'm not sure when Kenny retired.
But you would agree with me that Kenny Berkowitz
He's not
has
been on
both
for that
personal
long.
and professional relationships with you and members of your family, correct? With regard to your son Colin, he obviously lived in the same neighborhood as John O'Keefe because that's where your family lived, correct?
Correct.
And back in 2022, Colin Albert was 17 years old?
Correct. Part of the year.
And you knew that, like most teenagers, Colin drank alcohol with his buddies, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain for the jury who or what is Nebercracker?
What is Nebercracker?
Yes.
Oh, get off my lawn! Oh, trespasser!
Now, how many of us knew who Nebercracker? I don't even know how to say it. How many of you know what that was? Did you guys know who that was? I had no idea about whatever this is from, Monster something. Would not have known the name Nebercracker. But this was very, very funny to Chris and Julie and their kids. Very, very funny. Now, they have 3 boys. So very possible that it is, a movie that they just knew because the three sons, when they were growing up, it was a big movie for them. But this is like a very big joke. So watch. This is funny, and this is again the same. It kind of paints the same picture of John as taking off the shoes before you went in the house. He was very anal retentive about his lawn and about not wanting the kids, his neighbor Chris Albert's sons, to be cutting through and walking on his lawn. And he would make a big deal about it. So this was like the joke because he didn't want the boys walking through his lawn.
Do you want to be eaten alive?
And this was such a joke that Julie had him programmed
the
into
character?
her phone that way.
That's what I'm asking.
It's a character in a cartoon called Monster House.
And would you agree with me that Nebuchadnezzar in the movie Monster House was this kind of old curmudgeon who didn't want anybody on his lawn, correct?
The character, yes.
He was the get off my lawn guy, correct?
In the movie, yeah.
What was your nickname and your wife Julie's nickname for John O'Keefe?
Mr. Nebuchadnezzar.
All right. And your wife Julie actually had John O'Keefe plugged into his contacts as Nebuchadnezzar, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you were there one time when Julie showed Karen Reed, her phone to show how John O'Keefe was plugged in as Nebuchadnezzar, correct?
I believe so.
And this whole nickname started because of a conflict that Colin Albert had with John O'Keefe.
Not correct.
Ooh, he's ready for that one.
You about things that Colin was doing.
Not correct.
He would tell you that Colin used to throw beer cans or beer.
Look at how quickly, just like Colin, right? Look at how quickly his body language changed and he got defensive. Like he feels attacked. He feels like his kids are being attacked, and he immediately like shifted, right?
Beer bottles in his bushes, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
It's crazy. They're crazy.
That is not correct.
John O'Keefe
probably
told
is
you
correct.
that Colin used to flip him off, correct?
Not correct.
And say F you to him.
Never.
Sorry.
Nope, that was Dylan.
Nope.
You knew that
No, it wasn't Dylan. It was Colin. It's fine.
John didn't like people cutting through his yard, correct?
No, I don't know that to be true.
That's a lie. Definitive lie.
So is it your testimony that John O'Keefe invited kids to cut through his lawn all the time?
I don't understand. Is that a question?
Now
was
he's
a
just getting
question. I guess let
defensive.
me withdraw that and ask this. If John
You tell me, does that seem like an honest answer? We just heard.
Objection, Your Honor.
No, you can answer that. What's your answer?
I just
That
want
is
you
not
guys to
correct.
see one more thing. It's
John
very
O'Keefe
funny.
told you that Colin used to flip him off, correct?
Not correct.
And say F you to him.
Never.
Colin used to cut through his yard.
Nope, that was Dylan.
You knew that John didn't like people cutting through his yard, correct?
No, I don't know that to be true.
Okay. So is it your testimony that John O'Keefe invited kids to cut through his lawn all the time?
Sure is.
I don't understand. Is that a question?
It was a question. I guess let me withdraw that and ask this. If John O'Keefe is never cracked, and he's the get off your lawn guy, are you denying that he doesn't like people cutting through his lawn?
Do you want me to, can I explain?
I just asked for an answer to my question. Mr. Lally will get up after I'm done, and I'm sure you can explain whatever you want.
So no, he's not no.
All right. Well,
He thinks
you would
he's
agree
cute
with
here.
me that there was a time when John O'Keefe was not home that you and your wife Julie went to his house
That is correct.
and you entered onto his property.
Watch
correct?
this. This is hilarious.
On his front property, yes.
And you had drinks in your hand.
Correct.
And you thought it would be funny to have a photo taken of you and your wife with drinks in your hand on his property, correct?
Correct.
I
And
almost
you knew
died
it would
when
be
I
funny
saw it.
because you knew it would annoy him, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh, you can go ahead. Can you answer that?
Yeah, he was actually asking us to watch his house while he was away.
Right, but that doesn't answer my question, which was, he didn't ask you to go onto his property with drinks in your hand and take a photo, correct?
He asked us to watch his property.
Okay, but again, in answer to my question, the answer is no, he did not ask us to go on his property and take pictures of ourselves with drinks in our hand, correct?
Yeah, he didn't ask me to send him a photo.
All right. And you would agree with me that Nevercracker wouldn't like a photo of somebody on his lawn with drinks in their hands, correct?
The cartoon character, Nevercracker?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain. Next question, please,
Yes.
Mr. Yannetti.
Those depict.
It's me and my wife straddling John's fence. We're giving a thumbs up in one of them and a smile in another one.
Okay. And you say John's fence, so that's actually on John's property, correct?
Part of it is, yeah. I mean, I don't know what the easement is from the street to the fence as ownership goes, but yeah.
All right.
I know the town owns a certain portion of it.
Okay. Who took that picture?
That's a good question. I have no idea.
Where was your son Colin
It is a good question.
that night when you had that picture taken?
I have no idea.
With me that you texted those photos, or somebody texted those photos, whether it was you or your wife Julie, to John O'Keefe?
Absolutely.
All right. And offer those, are those a fair and accurate representation of the photos that you took?
Yeah.
All right. I would offer those, Your Honor.
All right, any objection?
No, Your Honor.
With regard to that first.
All right, so can you see what they're doing here? So I don't know if you're following what they're saying because it comes out so slow, right? So bottom line, John's away. They are supposed to be watching the house. And to be jerks, like to be assholes, they thought it would be hilarious if they went to the house and took pictures. So they take before and after pictures. So they'd send them a picture. Look, we're watching your house. This is Chris and his wife, Julie. Here we are watching the house. So this is the first picture. And they're obviously on the side of they're not on the lawn. They're on the other side. They're on the road, street side, whatever. And then in the next picture, they're on the other side. Here it is. Watch.
Photo.
Come on, that's funny.
Well, first of all,
It
whose
is
house
funny.
is that in the background?
That's John's.
Wife Julie on the left.
Correct.
We have the second photo, please.
It's funny. It is funny.
Yeah, they're
Oh
ball
my
busters.
God.
Look. And so now, right, Chris is on the other side and she's like, Julie's got the thumbs up, right? Yeah, I mean it's not a classy thing to do, right? It is funny because John is not here anymore. It's, loses a lot of its charm, right? For that reason. But it just they obviously, it was such a big deal to the household that John did not want them on the lawn, that they constantly used it, right, as like the centerpiece of their relationship with him. And it did cause a lot of friction with Colin. So here's how this is relevant to us now, right? So let's say Karen isn't looking. Karen drops off John in front of 34 Fairview. He starts cutting across, like past the mailbox towards not the front door, the side door. And Brian Higgins is outside already, right? Brian Higgins was clearly waiting for John. I mean, at this point, if we're still arguing that, I don't know how you could still be arguing that. I mean, he even sends him a text, right? Like, you coming here or what? Right. So we know that Higgins wants to see John. We know that he wanted him to show up. We also know, I'm not going to show this tonight because it would just take all night, but maybe next time I will play it. There's a lot you have to sort through in Higgins and in Brian Albert's testimonies from the last trial about what happens in the time after they leave the waterfall. and they both flip out. There's all kinds of freaking out happening for both of them in that hour, in the hour between 12 and 1. All kinds of freaking out. So there's a lot of lying and manipulating about the driveway, about the plow, like this whole thing about plowing the driveway, and about the garage. Right? So it's really interesting that the defense has finally said, oh, wait a minute. And I think what tipped the defense off to the garage rather than like the basement or someplace more in the house is that the GPS data, so the cell phone data and the temperature from the cell phone. So both of those, and I have all that here, but I'm not going to play it now because it goes on and on forever. But both from Ian Whiffin's testimony, we get GPS and the temperature data, both which say that John's phone was moving towards the garage, so it was moving west, and then it was kept inching like closer. So because wherever they were, that particular area, there wasn't a great signal. And that's not uncommon if you live in and around Massachusetts. You get like, of course, I'm sure this is true all over the place, but certainly in Massachusetts, there's like dead zones, right? Because, it's New England. So there's areas where, particularly less populated areas where, or if there's a lot of trees and a lot of coverage, you just don't get cell phone service. So their area didn't get great service to begin with. So John's phone is like coming up, like it's every once in a while, it's getting a good signal, and then it's not, and then it is, and then it's not. And in so doing, you're getting data that's moving to and from the house, right? So it's very clear that the phone could have definitely been in the garage. I mean, it's not even, it's like, this is, of course, right? There's no greater likelihood that the phone is in the yard than it is in the garage, according to the cell phone data. And there's evidence, of course, from the Apple Health that he's taking the steps for 84 feet. 84 feet, and this is what the measurements were about, earlier this week. 84 feet, it's like a perfect line from where Karen's car likely would have been and into the garage, right? So you start kind of adding all these pieces up and you see, okay, then there's the temperature data. The phone wasn't left outside, clearly, because it would have dropped way more. The temperature would have dropped way more than it did. Now, Brennan's saying, well, he was laying on the phone, and so it kept it from getting cold. But, I mean, that is just completely suspect. Who knows if that's true or if it's not true? And if John O'Keefe is dead, is that phone gonna, right, he's already dead. So how quickly before the body, drops dramatically in temperature? So again, I mean, I think all of that is just more speculation on Brennan's part. We would need somebody with a lot more knowledge and expertise to be able to tell us that definitively. But, right, so if you are in the garage with the phone, chances are real good it's going to be, not as cold as the outside, but still colder than the inside, right? So in terms of the temperature data. So I think when you look at all of this, you realize, and Brian Albert is clear, there were no cars in there. So there was no cars in the garage. I don't know what was in there, but there were no cars. Now, the other thing that's interesting, right? This is the time when everybody in the family, Brian Albert, Caitlin Albert, Nicole Albert, all tell us the first thing Dad wouldn't do when he came home was take the dog out. Right. Yeah. So this is the thing. Stacey B. Exactly. So the first thing Dad said he would do, this is what he said, that he would go upstairs because the dog stayed upstairs. This is what he said, and whether or not it's true, right? So the dog would stay upstairs, and then they would take him out through take her out through the back, and then let her go out and do her business in the backyard. Now, because, we had the fence in the back. However, that's what they said. Maybe the dog did go out the back, and then John is in the front. The two of them are fighting. The dog senses the hostility, jumps over the fence. Probably wouldn't even be that hard to do, right? And attacks John. So it's possible that the dog was already outside because Brian was taking the dog out. And that lines up timing-wise, approximately. The thing that's a little odd about the dog, too, is that other people in the house, like Sarah Levinson says she's never seen the dog ever at any point. So is it possible the dog could have stayed in the garage? Of course. Of course it's possible. The thing about that, though, there was no entrance directly from the house to the garage. So that's a little weird. I'm not sure. I mean, hard to say. Like, would you keep your dog? Certainly I wouldn't keep my dog in the garage because she's 5 pounds and would be dead. but that's my dog. I don't know that you'd want to keep your dog in the garage, but if your dog is aggressive and you have a house full of your son's friends because it's his birthday and everyone's drinking, yeah, maybe you do keep the dog in the garage, right? So, yeah, I mean, certainly could have. So Mary Lindsay brings up a good point, and there's lots of people who've sent me all kinds of emails and information about like what the investigative situation was with both Brian, because Brian was an active Boston police officer at the time and had been for 30 years, right? And at the same time, what John was investigating, scientist brain. So, right. So you have I have information, for example, that there was a prostitution scandal that because John worked in sex crimes, I believe, right? Something along those lines, right? So I don't know exactly. I can't remember exactly the specifics of what John did, but I believe it was more along the lines of like the sex crimes. God, what are some of the other language around that kind of work? And I can't think of it right now. But the point that this person was sharing with me, via email, is that John was investigating what eventually became a very big like prostitution ring where they were using Ubers. I don't know if some people may have heard of this, that he was using, they were using Ubers to have women, I think they were Asian women, come to the house, and that Brian Albert was very much involved in that. I don't know if it was human trafficking. I mean, maybe that is what John did. Yes, it could have very well been human trafficking that John was involved in. Makes sense because they usually go together, right? But this particular issue or specific case that John was working on, somebody was telling me they believed very much that the thing that Brian Albert would have had a reason to want to hurt John O'Keefe. Now, it's possible that that is true. Certainly, I just don't think that if Brian Albert wanted to hurt John in order to get back at him for something, this would not have been the vehicle. Like, if I'm Brian Albert and I'm going to murder John O'Keefe, I'm not going to do it when I'm shit-faced. My son's 23rd birthday, his friends are downstairs, so I completely hear that it's possible that Brian may not have loved John O'Keefe, and John O'Keefe may have had something on Brian Albert. Very possible, all possible. I just don't think that that's what happened this night. I think what happened this night was absolutely an accident. And certainly, if you guys have seen the video that I made with Brian Higgins, then you know that I believe very much it was an accident and that Brian Higgins feels responsible primarily. But clearly, the dog attacked John. So Brian Albert is also responsible at a baseline, right? So the question for me, and this is what I'm going to leave you guys to think about because I have to get up really early tomorrow morning. And this is the question. So think about this and really think about this. This is an important question. So Colin Albert, it is very clear that Colin Albert had every proclivity for fighting and very likely was, in all likelihood, could have possibly been either about to leave the house. Like maybe part of that story about Colin leaving the house just before John got there, maybe part of that is true. Maybe he was about to leave. So he happens to be outside at the same time as John is showing up, right? Maybe. And because he's, one of these people that obviously can be set off like at the drop of a dime, and he's drinking, is it possible that Colin could have seen John and just started swinging? I mean, yeah, it is, right? Colin's obviously not a rocket scientist, and clearly can be provoked in less than a second, right? All Alan Jackson had to do is be like, I forgot even the phrase now, but it's something just so ridiculous, right? Like, what, you want some? Come on. So, I mean, a drunk Colin Albert could have very easily just immediately started to fight with John, particularly because they had this history together, right? Of the lawn guy. So here's the thing. They are definitely protecting Colin. Like, the Alberts are protecting Colin. But the question is, are they protecting him because he actually did do something wrong and he was there? Or because they just know that he'd be an easy person to blame it on? Because there was problems between the two of them. Because Colin did have a history of fighting. And because Colin is just like an easy, obviously, Colin's a moron, right? He's a moron. He gets drunk. He fights everybody. There was literally the next day after on the stand, he says, I've never been in a fight. He's like, are you sure about that? Jackson gives him every chance to take it back. He just keeps, no, I've never been in, doubles down. The next day, there's two, though I think there was three, but I only saw two. Two videos were released of him fighting in high school. So the question is, right? Is it that Colin really did do something? Maybe Colin went and got the dog. I don't know. Maybe Colin's the one that let the dog out. Maybe Colin was smoking weed outside and, John stumbled upon him in the garage smoking pot. I don't know. Possible. Or was Colin just completely had nothing to do with any of it, but just was there at the same time? And because he was there and his father is so afraid that something could happen, that they could put it on Colin because he would be an easy person to put it on. And because of what happened to him, that he's just protecting him, that he's protecting Colin simply because he could be implicated, but not because he was doing something wrong. So that's the thing in my mind for you guys to try to, sit with it, think about it. What do we know? Right. I mean, that's something to really, you have to really sort of sort through that one. That's a big question. But yeah, so the question is did Colin actually do something, or was he just such an easy person to implicate that they tried to hide him so that he couldn't be implicated? Does that make sense? Yeah, I mean, no. 100% Jane Gray says Higgins did it. Higgins definitely is primarily responsible. But here's the reason why I don't think, or here's the reason why, all right, let me put it this way. Let me say it a different way. Why in God's name would Brian Albert, Jen McCabe, would all of these people go to such great lengths, put themselves, risk the rest of their lives in jail for Brian Higgins? There's no way. No way. No way. They all saw it. It was in other words, Brian Albert's a big shot in town, right? These guys are cops. I mean, they're very well connected cops. All they would have had to have done, called up, the chief of police, whatever, and said, listen, we have a situation here. This guy, John O'Keefe, he came at me. We all saw it. He was starting a fight with Higgins because, he found out that he was texting with his girl. Think about how easy that would have been. He came at him. We all saw it. John was the aggressor. It was self-defense. Brian hit him. He fell. We all were there. We all witnessed it. But they didn't do that, right? There has to be some amount of culpability on the Alberts. Otherwise, there's just no reason why they wouldn't have just just went to bat for Brian Higgins, and he would have walked. He would have walked. There's no question. Even though it was involuntary manslaughter and they were drinking, there's no question that because of who they were and the situation that they were in, I just don't see Brian Albert putting his family, like if Brian Albert's family has no involvement in this at all, why would you put your family right in the middle of this? Do you know what I mean? Like, risk all of their lives because they're all lying. Just doesn't make sense. I just don't think he would do it. So there has to be some culpability on the part of the Alberts. There has to be. And maybe it is just that maybe it's the dog. I mean, because let's be honest, right? I mean, hard to hide that. Hard to hide it's just, and this is like the last thing I just want to make this point because it's incredible, right? I think about this a lot. So many crazy coincidental situations that came all like had to happen at the same time for this to happen, right? Like you think about Karen and everything that went on with her and John, so that earlier that whole month, you think about the Higgins texts, but all of that was like colluding in the background to give so that each of these people kind of had like some like, for example, I think about Karen Reed running around saying, could I have hit him? Could I have hit him? Now, it makes perfect sense to me why Karen would have done that. Both because she's, just stumbled upon her boyfriend who, in her mind, she's been accusing all night of cheating and fighting with, and has issues with all month, right? They've been fighting about this. So I get she doesn't remember right away, whatever. I get why Karen immediately blamed herself. But think about how convenient of an out she gave these people. I mean, and that's exactly what happened. As soon as Jen McCabe starts telling Brian Higgins that Karen Reed was on the scene saying, could I have done this? Look at my taillight. I mean, Brian jumped down her throat, Brian Higgins, and said, you better call Sergeant Link and get him back here. And that's exactly what he does. And we know that because that's what Brian Higgins tells us. Brian Higgins tells us he directed Jen McCabe as soon as he heard that Karen Reed said, could I have hit him? So somebody else had said this earlier, and they are 100% correct. I too believe that Lucky was, the plow guy was going to be the fall guy. And here's the other thing. And I think the fact that I now know, I don't know if you believe it or not yet, but I have come to the conclude that Jen McCabe Googled hypothermia. But the reason why she Googled hypothermia was to try to determine whether it was a viable, possible, let me put it this way. The guy never came in the house. We'll just say we don't know what happened. And the idea would have been he fell, he was drunk, he fell, he hit his head outside, he hit a rock, right? And he died of hypothermia. But in order to know whether that would have been a viable excuse, they had to Google hypothermia. So to me, the reason why they were Googling hypothermia was to determine whether it was a viable excuse. Right? To me, that as soon as I heard that was not what he had died from, it was like, oh, well, that must have been why Jen McCabe must be Googling, right? And I guess this is what I'll leave you with. If there's a turning point in this trial, like I can't imagine a world where Karen Reed isn't exonerated, but if she is, if there's a turning point in this trial, to me, all along, I think Hank Brennan believed that no matter what happens with ARCA and the science, all along, he still has the I hit him statements. And if you think back to like his opening statement where he was like, telling the story of like the hero firefighter, which was just, I don't know, very hard for me to see Nuttall in this light, but when you think about, when I think about that, like Hank's hubris, right? Like that, like arrogance. I think he thought, I've got the I hit him statements no matter what, right? And that was true up until, and this is where Dr. Marie Russell, like I said before, took a stick, the biggest stick she could find, and shoved it so far up Hank's, you know what? And it'll go down in my mind as like one of the great moments in all of this. And this is precisely what she says. And it's funny because when I saw this the first time, I didn't actually see the whole lead up. I just kind of like came back in and this is what was happening. Then I went back and watched the whole lead up. And the whole lead up, Hank is kind of, he's getting aggressive with her. She's, not coming across great up until this moment. Like just before this, she's kind of a little bit meek and he's kind of badgering her and successfully. And then he asks her this, and this is it. It's just, to me, this gave the juries exactly the little bit of doubt that they needed to eviscerate the I hit him statements. So I will play that for you here.
Have you seen any of the media statements by the defendant? 2020 Nightline docuseries. Have you seen any of
slows
these statements
down.
in your analysis of whether or not there was a impact of collision between the defendant and her Lexus, Mr. O'Keefe? Have you seen any of those?
I did see some statements, but that was after I rendered my opinion.
And some of those statements, after you rendered your opinion, did some of those statements come from the defendant herself?
Yes.
And when you listen to those statements, did you hear any of them talk about the idea or issue of collision or impact?
Yes.
And when you listen to those statements after you formed your opinions, did in any way change the analysis of your opinion?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why.
Please do.
Because she had, the defendant had undergone a very stressful event, finding her loved one in the snow. And so after a stressful event, many people suffer from what's called an acute grief reaction. It's very common. And they do things that seem to be irrational. They ramble. They act bizarrely. They make statements that are irrational, that don't make sense, and they oftentimes tend to blame themselves for whatever has happened. I've seen this many, many, many times in the emergency department.
Does this happen moments after a stressful event?
Oh, yes.
Does it happen months later when you go on 2020 or Nightline?
I've never seen that situation.
No. Does it happen a year later when you go and speak to documentarians and be interviewed? Is that the same kind of condition you see a year later, year and a half later?
A grief reaction can last years. It usually is very brief, but it can last years.
The thing about her that just makes that so great, such a classic moment, is it's so genuine. She's genuinely responding to the answers to this piece of garbage's questions, and she's telling the truth, right? Like, she's right. That's exactly right. And how many of us, and if you're a juror, everybody knows somebody who's lost a loved one, whether it's rational or not, and who blame themselves. Everybody knows somebody. And it might not be somebody close to you. It could have been like your college roommate's friend's cousin. I mean, it doesn't have to be somebody that you're close to, but everybody knows somebody who irrationally blames themselves for a loss. And so when she said that, it's like, as someone who's just constantly like psychologically minded from birth, before psychology, right? Before I even knew that was a thing, just how my brain works anyway. So I never even for 1 second asked that question, like, why would she be doing that? Because I just knew why she'd be doing that. It was just, yeah, of course she's doing that, right? But Dr. Russell took that in my head and gave it like the most clear, just so beautifully, eloquently communicated in a genuine way, and served it up to Hank and to the jury. And so to me, it just eviscerated the I hit him statements, just took them away. It's like, not only does it not matter if she said, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Or I did hit him. It just gave the juries an out. the jurors an out, right? It gave them an out. Like, oh yeah, okay, yep. That's all they needed. Like, you just need, like, it's reasonable doubt, right? Like, it's like you just need the little out, the little tiny voice. It's like, well, she's right. So that, I don't know. I think in the end, that was the beginning of the end for Hank Brennan, because he definitely didn't see that coming. And if you had seen any of her testimony in the past or the voir dire with her, she just wasn't as strong. She wasn't as confident. She wasn't as prepared. And she did a tremendous job. So, that's the other thing. And this is the last thing I will say about this. I absolutely promise. And thank you guys so much for your support. I just can't thank you enough. You just can't thank you all enough. You're just the absolute best. And like I said before, right? Like, never had any real intention to be on YouTube and chatting with all of you guys, but this is so much fun, and it's been so interesting and just such a joy to be like talking to everybody and a part of this community. So it is very special, and I appreciate you so much. And we're going to figure it out. I mean, there's no question in my mind. Like, it's just now just a matter of working out all the details. But I have 100% faith in our collective ability to do that. And hopefully within, like, I don't know, the next 48 hours, I mean, it could be as soon as the next 48 hours, we're all somewhere celebrating, right? I don't know if I'm going to try to get to Dedham. I don't know if the timing is going to work out. I will be heading north sometime in the next 24 hours. Anyway, this is my sister Jackie's daughter's birthday party is Saturday. So we will be all together celebrating. And that is why she's not here too, because getting ready for the party. But so we'll be up there, and it may work out that we'll get to be there when it happens. It may not. We'll see. Fingers crossed. But I don't know. I guess the next time that we're together next Wednesday night, we'll know whether or not Karen Reed is done with this crap forever. Wouldn't that be something? Still hard for me to wrap my mind around completely, but I hope so. God, I hope so. Everybody enjoy the rest of your night. And I will see you again next week, I hope.